very much.
By the grace of God.
No, I'd like it to be better.
Yeah. Well, she's planning ahead, you know, she's gonna get one of those.
Because I don't just have trouble seeing, but
I see you another day.
It's just when I couldn't read the small print in my Bible, so now I've been using the bigger one.
yeah, but I can't see any signs and, I know I'm not.
Last night, you opened this window.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can we leave it closed?
Yeah, because you figured out right next to me here.
Oh, okay.
Just like it's about
I
a
heard
So, yeah.
pictures of a bird's nest.
Oh, okay, yeah. Now we know.
I never knew they were coming.
Yeah, life is what we make it.
We had an awesome time. Next was very. I guess it depends where.
Did you have a snack?
No.
But,
Snack needed?
definitely.
There's like a little dessert in there.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, you're.
Let's see what else.
I didn't drink anything after we left here. I still got up 2 times through the night and then again this morning.
Whether I sleep or not. During the day.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Carol comes, this time wants to sit here, then I'll move on. We did your place last time, she sat over there, maybe she can hear her, she better. I guess you can sit it in her.
Yes, we write it the same way. C-E, you write it with we write it C-E-C-I-L-I-A. But very, very close. Yes, I was very insisting that we this kind of
Check, check. Hi, everybody. My mom told me, don't chew and talk at the same time. But I'm totally breaking that rule right now. So I will hand the mic over to Thyra as I chew.
Yeah, and we'll applaud her, applauding you.
Not for chewing and talking at the same time.
Well, we're applauding you for accepting the call and accepting our call to come here to us.
Oh, by
So,
God's grace.
by God's grace, yes. So,
Arrived in one piece.
yeah, right. And
My car is a different story.
yeah, we've surely been blessed, blessed. And we want to just give thanks to the Creator at this time.
I'll sit down, look down,
All right.
but she'd like to be there, maybe she can see it from here.
Loving Father and our Creator, our God who art in heaven, we just want to acknowledge you and thank you for seeing beyond our faults and attending to our needs by sending Dr. Plummer here to help us to get on the path of good health. And Father, as we participate this evening, I pray that you be with her, guide her thoughts, guide us, Lord, and help us to understand, help us to remember what we hear here this evening, and also help us to share it with others as we go along the way. Help us to retain it as well, Lord. So, Father, be with us now. We ask for your Spirit to be with us. And we ask all these mercies in your name. All your relations. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Thyra. A few announcements before we get started. Again, for those who are here every night, you will be getting a copy of my book, which will be ordered on Amazon. So please make sure that you sign in so we know who came and who didn't. Tomorrow we're going to be doing free in-body assessments from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. Initially, I'd said it was just a drop-in, come at any time between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. As a matter of fact, some of those times are already taken up, but I think it might be better so that, yes?
You said Thursday or tomorrow?
Wait, what day is tomorrow? Wednesday? Yeah. Let's do a rewind on that. Thursday between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So I said it was a drop-in, but a lot of people have asked, and I see that probably I'm setting everyone up for a traffic jam of people coming and waiting. So we're going to have a sign-up sheet, which hasn't been created yet, but will before the end of the night. And maybe I could ask Thyra? The appointments will be about 20 minutes, and then you can just talk to Thyra at the end of the night. And we'll do it that way. And we'll have appointments going. So the last appointment time would be 3:40. And that's Thursday morning, 10:30 to 10:50 to 9:20. Yeah, Thursday morning. And as a matter of fact, I think some people have already booked, so it's starting at 11. We've got from about 8:30 until 11 already, those spots already occupied. So 11 until 4 on Thursday.
20 minutes segment.
20 minutes. Awesome. How many people here stopped drinking water earlier than you normally do? All right. How many people maybe didn't go to the bathroom in the middle of the night or didn't go as much as you normally do? Okay. Didn't go at all? All right. Excellent. So it works. The proof is in the pudding or in your own life experience. Yes?
You know, if I don't have my sixth water, about
Get dry.
It's so dry, I can hardly breathe. So I have my sips during the night.
Oh, and then do you go to the bathroom during the night?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that might help with that is actually a humidifier. Like if your room is warm, especially now that the weather's changing, so that you have more of a moist environment.
I take a fisherman's cough candy every night
Okay.
to keep my throat.
Humidifiers, I see I'm going to be loosely recommending humidifiers everywhere. And then air purifiers are excellent as well. So you know the quality of your air is high. There's no mold, which tends to happen. And then a humidifier, so it's not so dry that your throat's getting dry and you're coughing. On the screen it says all about eating, but we're going to go beyond eating today, so it's going to be a little bit of a fast-paced marathon because I want to talk a little bit about immunity, a little bit about digestion, and a little bit about something else called the microbiome that not a lot of people talk about or know about, but if you want to talk about immunity and digestion, then you need to touch on the microbiome to understand how that kind of plays a part. Has anybody heard that term before, the microbiome? Okay, so you know. However, yesterday at the very end, I asked people what they do to help with stress. And I noticed, if you look at the screen right now, I noticed that not a lot of people said they just go out in the woods, or they go hiking in the woods, or they go for a walk through the forest. Okay. What was that?
I've got a dog,
You've got a dog, so you go out every day.
a big lab.
Yes. I guess in my thoughts, like when people walk their dogs, at least in Toronto, it's like on the sidewalk or maybe a park. It's not in the forest. But you have such beautiful forest and woods and lake and beautiful things here. There was actually a study done on stress reduction that originally came out of Japan, and they began this idea of forest bathing, where people just go out into the forest and they stay there so they can bathe in the better oxygen of the forest and the sunshine. And they found, and I would say the words in Japanese, but I'll probably butcher it. We'll save that for the end. But they found that that's very good for reducing stress. So just being out in nature for stress reduction can be very effective. Okay, I want to start, though we're talking about digestion, by starting with this basic idea. What we eat will either give us health or disease, meaning it will either render health or eventually, I mean, obviously, it's not instant. Usually it's over decades, eventually render disease. This is a good thought when you're about to eat your next meal, which I believe will be in about 40 minutes. You can ask yourself, is what I'm about to eat going to bring better health for me, or is it possibly leading to disease? As I said, it's not just once, it's over years, but just a simple question to help you evaluate what you're eating. Most people don't want to hear that, but it's what we're putting in our mouths as well as the environment that affects our health beneficially or not. What is a gut feeling? Has anybody heard the term, I just had a gut feeling about it? Yes. We actually have two brains. We have a brain up here and we have a brain in our gut. And the brain in our gut actually produces more of the feel-good hormone serotonin than the brain in our head. So there's a lot more happening to a gut feeling just besides intuition, or people might call it women's intuition, but there's actually an entire society living in our gut. This was one of the biggest gut-brain access conferences that happened in Paris in 2018, as there's been more and more investigation to the way that the gut affects the brain and the way that the brain affects the gut, especially when it comes to digestion and mental health, as well as weight. So, and of course, immunity. This is by Michael Spector. We're inhabited by as many as 10,000 bacterial species. Those cells outnumber those which we consider to be our own 10 to 1, and they weigh all told about 3 pounds, the same as our brain. So it's like the second brain, which is in your gut, weighs as much as this brain, which is in your head. Together they are referred to as our microbiome, and they play such a crucial role in our lives that scientists have begun to reconsider what it means to be human. I don't know about that last sentence, but we basically have an entire universe, an entire species, an entire ecosystem of species living in our bodies that most people are not aware of. I won't get into that, but basically the idea is that the gut affects the brain affects the gut. And there's an ongoing communication between the two. So I'd like you to look at this picture and maybe, yes, and what do you see there? Right, very good. I've actually shown this picture and, well, it's one-on-one to patients, and they're just looking at like, is there something funny there? I'm like, yes, keep looking. So you can think of it that way. When you're thinking of how you're feeling or how you're eating or stress levels, etc., think I'm actually both affecting my brain. I think this is the answer here. I'm affecting my brain and my gut at the same time, or the way that I'm eating, what I'm putting in my body might be affecting my gut, killing off my microbiome, and in that way, it's also affecting my brain function, my mood, my mental health, etc. Just another picture to emphasize that idea. So I'm using the term microbiome, but in case you don't know what it is, The microbiome is referring to the entire ecosystem or system of bacteria that live in our gut. We have good bacteria and we have bad bacteria living in our gut, and there are things that we can do in our lives, as well as the food that we're eating, as well as the environment that surrounds us, that actually feeds the good bacteria and helps to keep the bad bacteria in check, or it gives the bad bacteria a hold, and then we're in dysbiosis, meaning the good bacteria and the bad bacteria are out of a healthy ratio, if that makes sense. The reason why we're doing these presentations is we're hoping that people will feel excited and motivated about making lifestyle changes. So this is the general way that I think about making lifestyle changes, and it is this. In order to make lifestyle changes, it's a beautiful symphony between your thoughts, your mind, and your actions. Lasting change means working both with your mind and your mindset. That's why the very first day I asked, what do you think the first step is? And someone said, it's mindset. Do you believe it's possible? Then you make the decision and then you implement. So you're working with your mind, your mindset, and the body together. Part of making changes is just examining your own thinking, examining your own self-perception. What is your personal identity of yourself? And then examining your food intake. They're all important. So I like the idea of starting with the mind and how you think about change and yourself before just cutting to this is the diet that you should eat. That's probably the most frequent question that I get, like, just tell me, just put me on a diet, give me a meal plan, we're good. But then you have to dig into, okay, why are you eating the way you're eating in the first place? Do you believe it's possible to change? There's so much more involved. So it's this combination of your self-perception, examining the way you think about change and the way you think about yourself, and then looking at, okay, what am I eating and why am I eating what I'm eating? So tomorrow, which is not Thursday, it's Wednesday, tomorrow we're going to talk about weight loss. And when we talk about weight loss, we'll ask some of those questions. What's my relationship with food? Why do I eat the way I eat? Why do I make the decisions that I make? And hopefully people will feel comfortable sharing, but if not, you can write it down. I want to talk about easy lifestyle changes. And if you just think that making lifestyle changes is easy, then it'll be possible. One of the things that we talked about yesterday was water and drinking enough water, which I'll be doing before 7:30 tonight. But I'd suggest that sometimes people have sugar cravings, and when you're dehydrated, you're more likely to crave sugar. So we want to keep the water flowing, keep the water going. I'd read a study about dehydration and the brain. And that study said that dehydration actually shrinks the brain temporarily by 2%. So you want to water yourself and water your brain so that you can think as optimally as possible. Remember, sugar cravings may be a sign of dehydration. So this is what we want to do to our body. We want to water our body. But there is something we misinterpret dehydration for. I don't know why those little monkeys are there at the top. You can ignore those. What do you think is the thing that we misinterpret thirst for? Hunger, exactly. So one of the things that we misinterpret, you might think I have these cravings, I'm super hungry. Start by drinking water first, and then you can see, was I really hungry? Perhaps you were thirsty and not hungry at all. And what your brain is really saying is, I am thirsty, I'm not hungry, don't give me food, give me water instead. I work better when I am well hydrated. This might be what your brain's saying. Don't mistake my signal for thirst and eat when really you're thirsty. I mean, you are kind of feeding that dehydration a little bit because a lot of food has a water content. So that's where it gets a little mixed, but you want to hydrate first and then see, am I thirsty or not thirsty? Before we come back to the microbiome, I just want to introduce that idea. We're going to be getting to the microbiome at the very end. We're going to talk a little bit about digestion and the process of digestion. I had asked the other day, where does digestion begin? And someone automatically said the mouth. I know there were some good answers. Somebody said in the brain, in the mind, etc. One of the places that people know is affected by digestion, but they don't realize, is this place, which is right here, maybe, in the nose. Yes. Does anyone remember the name of the chemical that's secreted? It's a hormone when you smell really delicious food. I said it on day one. Ghrelin, exactly. Some people say ghrelin, some people say ghrelin. Ghrelin is your appetite hormone. So when you smell something that's delicious, ghrelin is secreted. It's affected by eyesight and smell, and then suddenly you're hungry. So if you don't want to eat between your meals, don't go smelling the food. I had a good friend who was my cousin's wife, and when we went to Whole Foods, this was in Miami because I go there once a year prior to the pandemic, and she would walk by the bakery, walk by the peanut butter. They have like the natural peanut butter with the grinders going, and she'd say, I just want to walk by and look and smell. But I'm not going to buy anything. And I knew it was a bad idea. I didn't understand why at the time. But then when you get home, that's when you kind of reach for all those snacky foods because you've been seeing and smelling, and by that time, your level of ghrelin is higher. So my question the other day was, where does digestion begin? Digestion actually begins, or better digestion, let's say optimal digestion. It begins even before the nose. It begins in your mindset. What kind of state am I in when I'm about to eat? So hopefully everyone here will be in a good state right before you eat. Are you stressed out? Are you in a fight or flight state? Did you just have an argument with someone? Are you just coming from work and you're ravenous, which I know can happen as well? So to have better digestion, you want to change your state. Change your state. And you can use some of the tools that we talked about yesterday to change your state. You can do the breathing. You can do the smiling. You can do the laughing. You can put your hands up in the air before you eat. You can do the power pose. Doing these things just to change your state so that you're not in a stressed kind of state. Because when you eat and you're stressed, it's kind of like a recipe, and I use that word intentionally, a digestive recipe for poor digestion. You're not going to make as much saliva as if you were rested. You won't have as much hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Your pancreas isn't going to secrete as much pancreatic amylase and different digestive juices. So you're setting yourself up for poor digestion. So step number one towards good digestion is change your state before you start eating. Step number two is, as we said yesterday when we were talking about mindful eating, appreciate the food before you even put it in your mouth. Look at the colors of the food. Put gratefulness and thankfulness in your mind. Don't just dig in. Just take a moment to appreciate the beauty of the food so you're present. Step number three is appreciate the smell of the food, because smell affects taste, and it will cause ghrelin levels to go up. So you're looking at the food, you're smelling the food, and then you might do something like thankfulness, gratitude, a prayer. That also helps to ensure that your state is nice and calm. And then you are ready to put the food in your mouth. Now, why is it important that you keep that food in your mouth for a fairly long period of time? And why is it important that you shift your state at the beginning? Because when you shift your state at the beginning, your body is going to secrete more saliva. And that saliva, which you might think is mostly water, actually has a lot more in it than just water. we have several different glands all around the mouth that help to secrete saliva. The big one is here. If anybody here had mumps when you were a kid, did anybody have mumps? I was fortunate enough to have mumps. I thought, oh, it's fun. I look like a chipmunk. But then it just went on, and then it wasn't fun anymore. But basically, that's the gland on the inside of the cheek, which is called the parotid gland, actually swelling up and getting inflamed and infected. But that is the biggest gland that causes salivary secretion or creates and secretes saliva. On the other side of your cheek, we have glands that are underneath our tongue, underneath our chin, all getting ready to secrete saliva and attack that food. So saliva is mostly water, but it does contain other things that are really important. One of them is the enzymes in saliva, and that enzyme is called salivary amylase. And what the salivary amylase does is it starts attacking the carbohydrates in your mouth, which actually sounds kind of gross. But it means that digestion, the physical side of digestion, begins in your mouth. If you drink water while you're eating, you put the food in your mouth and then you swish it down with the water, and really the food didn't have enough time to be coated by the saliva, and really for the saliva, the amylase in the saliva to start attacking the food. So another step towards better digestion is do not drink while you're eating. I just said this to a patient today, and they're like, what? Don't drink while you're eating? It's so automatic. You put the food in your mouth, take a swish, and then swallow. And yet you hardly had time, your mouth hardly had time, and these glands hardly had time to secrete the saliva, to attack the food, for it to break down the food, and then for you to swallow. The other benefit of the saliva is that it's antimicrobial. So that is a chunk of food, let's say carrot, that somebody put in their mouth. The salivary glands respond by secreting a lot of saliva, and saliva naturally cleans the food. And sorry to tell you, but all food has bacteria on it. Everything, everywhere has bacteria on it. So you put the food in your mouth, and then you immediately swallow it. Yes, the hydrochloric acid in your stomach's probably going to kill the bacteria, but the bacteria starts to be killed off in the mouth with the saliva. So you want to put the food in your mouth, don't drink while you're eating. And then the other thing is, as I said the other day, next step, chew your food. So whatever your mom told you, I know my mom said, like, don't talk and chew your food. Mothers were right. So chew your food until it is like nearly liquid in your mouth, until it's almost like applesauce. Then swallow. Go ahead.
If you say not to drink while you're eating, but if you, once you've swallowed, does it hurt to take a sip then?
I wouldn't even do that because you don't want to kind of dilute the saliva. So you can drink, pardon me?
Doesn't it slow down the digestion too?
Well, the saliva is what helps with the digestion. So I always recommend drinking water before. This is actually one of my weight loss tools, maybe 15 to 30 minutes before, drink the water, and then maybe 30 minutes after, drink the water, but don't drink any water in between while you're eating. So how does digestion work? You take something like a beautiful carrot, and you've already checked your state of mind. Okay, I'm in a calm state of mind. You look at the food, you appreciate the food, you smell the food, ghrelin's being secreted, and then you go to eat the food. You might say a prayer first, thankfulness, gratitude. Eat the food, you chew and chew and chew and chew and chew, and that food stays in your mouth. Your salivary glands get activated. They secrete a lot of saliva. The food is now clean and broken down, so digestion starts. And then after that, after it goes in your mouth, then you're ready to swallow. Carbohydrates, actually, the digestion of carbohydrates begins in your mouth. So you want to keep that food in the mouth for as long as possible. I've had many patients, and there it goes down the esophagus. Many patients who have digestive issues, a lot of belching, bloating, etc. And I say before, I'm going to ask you this question, but I think I already know the answer. And the question is, are you a fast eater? About 98% of the time, well, I can't say anybody's ever said no who has digestive issues. The answer is always yes. They're just kind of rifling through or getting through their food very quickly. Sometimes that happens if you grow up with brothers and sisters who are going to eat your food. That's one of my best friends. She grew up with 2 brothers, and she's a super fast eater because whoever was finished first helped the person who was finished last. So she had to eat quickly so that her brothers didn't eat her food. But I'll ask, are you a fast eater? I don't think it's on. But I'll ask if you're a fast eater. And they'll say yes, they're a fast eater, which means that they're not keeping the food in their mouth for long enough. So if you're a fast eater, I would suggest that you slow down. Chew and chew and chew the food. After that, you swallow. After you swallow, the food goes into your stomach, and I've already mentioned the acid that's in the stomach. It's called hydrochloric acid. And the hydrochloric acid is where proteins are broken down. So this is like a generality, but protein digestion begins in the stomach. So hydrochloric acid really breaks down proteins, and after that, that's the carrot or whatever the meal that we just ate, bathed in hydrochloric acid. Oops, I didn't even know. Oh, wait, that's the good thing that's coming next. That doesn't look very appetizing. But basically, if you're thinking of a condition like acid reflux, how many people here have acid reflux or have had? Okay. Some people call it heartburn. Anybody else? So if you're thinking that your stomach is full of hydrochloric acid, especially when you're eating, and if you're finished eating and your stomach's like this, the acid's like this, and after that you lie down, lying down after eating is one of the worst things you can do for acid reflux or heartburn. So I always recommend after eating, if you're someone who is prone to heartburn, do not lie down afterwards. It's better to wait 15 minutes and go for a walk. You also burn off the sugar at that point. But between the stomach and the esophagus, which is like that long tube that's coming down, so in a kind of perpendicular angle, there's a little sphincter. You can think of it as a gate, which is called the lower esophageal sphincter, or it's also known as the cardiac sphincter. It keeps the acid in the stomach, and it stops the acid from going back up the throat. But you don't want to make it easier by reclining or by sitting. A lot of people like their lazy boy chairs after dinner, and they'll recline like this, and then you're making it easier for the acid to go up. For some people, that sphincter isn't working properly, or stress affects the way that it works as well. So for better digestion, do not lie down after your meals. Sound good? Protein digestion happens in the stomach. Okay, this is a picture of the way our stomach works. Our stomach basically, and through the intestines as well, basically pushes the food. Obviously, this is empty because it was an endoscope, so there's no food in the stomach. But through this waving action, which is called peristalsis, your stomach is pushing the food further and further down through the stomach and then into the small intestine. And I think that that camera was actually focusing on the part where the stomach meets the small intestine. So you can imagine if there was food in there and this constant wave is happening, which is peristalsis, the food is moving further and further through the stomach and into the small intestine. There are some medications that actually affect peristalsis, so they cause that wave to not work the way that's supposed to, and they'll affect peristalsis in the intestines as well. That's just a clip. We'll go back to a back to a diagram instead. I said protein digestion begins in the stomach. What is next after that? You could imagine that the food moves from the stomach into small intestine. In general, the digestion of fats begins in the small intestine. This is where it's really interesting because the gallbladder comes into play here. There are many people who don't have a gallbladder. And I always get this question from someone who doesn't have a gallbladder. That's how I know they don't have one, because they'll ask questions about bile and the breakdown of fat. But without a gallbladder, your liver is still creating bile. Is there anybody here who does not have a gallbladder? Oh, there you go. So I'm going to talk about the gallbladder, but then I'll tell you also what happens. So basically, the digestion of fat starts in the small intestine. Bile is created by the liver. The liver sends the bile to the gallbladder. The gallbladder is just like a sac that holds the bile. So it's like a holding station. And then when the fats are in the small intestine, the gallbladder becomes active. It starts secretion of bile to break down the fat. After the fat is broken down by the bile, then it's in a different form, and it's broken down into chyme, which is just like strands or segments of fat that make the digestion of fat easier. The other thing that's very important for strong digestion is just to have a strong lining in the small intestine. So the villi, it's like the small intestine has these ridgy edges along the perimeter or the outside part of the small intestine. They're called villi, and a digestion or absorption happens through the villi. If you have a disease like celiac disease, not a sensitivity, but the actual disease, which is an autoimmune disease, the villi get blunted, so your absorption is not as strong or effective. Is there anyone here with celiac disease? Okay. So that's the reason why digestion is affected in that way, because celiac disease causes an autoimmune type of attack on the villi in the small intestine. But if you don't have a gallbladder, let's say you had gallstones, and so you had your gallbladder removed, it's still possible to have very good digestion of fats, but I usually recommend to my patients, why don't you cut down on the unhealthy fats? So cut down on fried foods, cut down on takeout foods, cut down on, all the no-no foods. They've got a lot of oils in them, and you're just consuming foods that have healthy fats, maybe avocados. You might have a little bit of olive oil, or as I said, avocado oil, maybe a bit as your dressing, but you have to be a little more careful. So it's not that you don't have bile to break down the fat, it's that you don't have the the container that holds the bile. And in that way, the liver is creating the bile, and the bile is kind of dripping, you might say, into the small intestine. So you still have bile, you're still breaking down fat, but the process is a little bit different, so you have to be a little more careful. So the digestion of fat starts in the small intestine. That actually applies to everybody. So, and now what we just ate is traveling through the small intestine to where it doesn't look as nice. It's eventually going to travel to the large intestine. But what I just said about fats, and especially with longevity, we don't want to kind of overwork our gallbladder or even our liver. So cutting down on fried foods, oily foods, etc., and limiting or completely eliminating that from your diet, then will not make your gallbladder kind of overwork, etc. There are some reasons, particular foods that you should avoid if you're more apt towards gallstones or you already have gallstones. One of them is having too much spinach, which I don't normally say, just because of the oxalates in the spinach can kind of gather and they become an ingredient for the stones. And cutting down on kale, which is funny for me to say as well, but you can still have a lot of healthy leafy greens and healthy vegetables But if you already have stones, then you have to be a little more careful. After the digestion of the fats in small intestine, we have covered carbohydrates, protein, and fats. Before I go on to what's happening in the large intestine, I just want to give a few more kind of clues as to how to avoid heartburn, because that is one of the most common or popular digestive complaints that I hear of. And then we'll talk about bloating, etc. Aside from not lying down after you eat, the second thing, which is also good for weight loss, is don't overfill your stomach. So you want to eat, as I said the other day, until you're 2/3 full. Don't eat until you're stuffed. And eating until you're 2/3 full instead of until you're really full kind of helps to prevent too much, let's say, too much hydrochloric acid from pushing up against the lower esophageal sphincter. So don't eat until your stomach's full. Sometimes harder to do than just to say like that, because that's often a habit that people have had for years. The next tip, if you want to avoid heartburn or acid reflux, would be don't eat right before bed. So, which also helps with weight loss. So a lot of these things go hand in hand. I'd recommend eating 4 hours before bedtime. So you don't want to eat and then not have a lot of time for your food to digest, and then you're lying down, and then you're back into that situation of the hydrochloric acid being pushed up against the cardiac sphincter. I say cardiac sphincter because it's easier to say than lower esophageal sphincter. Those basic things can make a really big difference. Aside from that, there are some natural remedies that I recommend. DGL, which is based on licorice, can be really helpful for acid reflux. But before I recommend those things, I normally say, okay, let's start with changing these habits, and then you don't have to rely on that supplement. So what happens after the fat is digested in the small intestine? So in terms of fats, as I said, you want to cut down on fatty foods, cut down on oily foods, cut down on eating out, etc., all very high in fats. Limit the fats to things like avocado, maybe nuts, seeds, and maybe drizzling a little bit of olive oil or avocado oil, and that's it. The other thing, an experiment you can do with the first step there, the digestion of protein in the mouth, aside from chewing until it's like liquid in your mouth and not drinking while you're eating, is you can do this experiment at some point where you take a cracker. Unfortunately, we didn't talk about this yesterday because you had crackers on the table. But you might take 1 or 2 crackers, put them in your mouth, and chew the cracker until, I'll ask tomorrow, but of course when you get home, there's no eating when you get home. You'll have to do it tomorrow morning. You chew the cracker until it's nearly liquid in your mouth. And you might notice when you first put the cracker in your mouth that it doesn't taste particularly sweet. But as you keep chewing it, the sweetness of the cracker kind of comes out. Because a cracker is predominantly, most crackers, predominantly carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are basically converted into glucose. So the more the salivary amylase is attacking that carbohydrate in the mouth, the more it's like it's turning it into glucose, you could say, in a loose way. Try the experiment. You can come back, and if it doesn't work, just tell me straight up. It still tasted like a cracker, but it should get sweeter and sweeter. Okay, what happens after the food has gone past the small intestine? The small intestine is key. I mean, every step here is key for better digestion, but the small intestine is the place where your food is absorbed. So you might have heard the saying, you are what you eat. I would change that to, yes, making good food choices, very important, but you are what you absorb. So you can make great food choices, but if you're not absorbing the nutrients from the food, you're not getting the benefit. This is the reason why strong digestion is very important, and having a very healthy small intestine also very important. The other thing that can happen at this point where we're in the small intestine of the food being absorbed is if you have an issue with the small intestine where the junctions in the small intestine, and this might sound funny, but you might think of it like cobblestone. So your small intestine has these junctions where they're all fitting together perfectly. The same way if you took two pieces of cobblestone and you put them together like a puzzle piece, they fit perfectly. But if there's a space between those junctions, which is known as leaky gut, then some of the food, before it's completely broken down, can slip between the junctions and then it's out in the bloodstream. Then your immune system responds by thinking it's a foreign object or an invader, and then your immune system begins attacking that food, and then you have like a hyperimmunity response. Some people call this leaky gut. So having very strong, like no permeability in the small intestine, very important. I hope that made sense, and you might ask, how do you do that? Food choices, important. Lowering stress levels, very, very important. Having a healthy liver and healthy gallbladder, also important, and exercise can help as well. Aside from that, with patients that I've had who have severe digestive issues and leaky gut, I then usually go to a supplement. And that supplement usually is something like L-glutamine. That's what we start with. And or we might do a combination of trying to fortify the liver a little bit with milk thistle. There are a few supplements that combine those things, milk thistle, L-glutamine, marshmallow, all together, and that just gives time for your body to heal the gut. But I don't start with that. I start with, let's make these lifestyle changes, and then maybe let's add these things as well. What happens after the fat is broken down, then whatever is left, which is the waste, is then going up the ascending colon, which is on the right side of the body. Also very important because fluids and minerals are absorbed in the ascending colon. So what happens in the colon, very, very important as well. Each step in digestion is key. Some of the fiber is digested by the bacteria, which are the friendly bacteria, part of the microbiome, that are living in the ascending colon. So what you're eating is actually feeding the bacteria. You can think of it as you're not just feeding yourself, but you're feeding your bacteria. And you're either feeding the good bacteria, that went a little faster, kind of in between two spots there. You're either feeding the good bacteria or you might be feeding the bad bacteria. You want to feed the good bacteria. And feeding the good bacteria is one of the things good bacteria likes is fiber. As we said yesterday, you don't want to increase your fiber, but not increase your water. That's going to lead to this whole part of everything, all the waste moving through the large intestine. It's going to lead to constipation. But what happens in the large intestine, very important. Toxins which accumulate in the transverse colon are carried from the bowel by the fiber. So fiber acts kind of like glue for toxins, and you want to make sure those toxins go out the back door. There's something else that fiber kind of glues or attaches to, and that happens in the large intestine. Does anybody know what else that is? Cholesterol. Ooh, very good. Who said that? Cholesterol. You got it right off the bat. Exactly, cholesterol. So eating certain types of fibers or certain families of fiber help with getting cholesterol out of your body because the cholesterol kind of gets glued to the fiber. You make a nice bulky stool. And then, in order for it to really work, you have to have regular bowel movements. The fiber is usually something that has beta-glucan in it, which makes it very sticky for cholesterol, like certain types of oats. Steel-cut oats are great for this, high in beta-glucans. When it comes to oats, they're not all the same. A lot of people buy the quick oats. You don't want to get those, or they'll buy the quick steel-cut oats. I'm not sure what they do to it so that they cook that fast, but you want the old-fashioned steel-cut oats, not quick cooking, the kind that take 20 to 25 minutes to cook. the old-fashioned, I don't even recommend the sprouted rolled oats because those are super fast and they make weight loss a little bit tougher, unless you're someone who's not focusing on weight loss. So the old-fashioned steel-cut oats takes 20 to 25 minutes to cook. That's what you want to eat, and that actually is something that can help with lowering your cholesterol only if you're having regular, good, bulky stools. And then that's only going to work if things are moving out of the body, preferably twice a day and not just once a day. So toxins that are accumulating in the colon are they get glued to the fiber and they go out the back door as well. Oops. And the final part of this, as it's going through the large intestine, the interesting thing is the large intestine goes up one side of our body, across, down the other side. This is quite a long way for it to travel, and then out the body as well. One of the diseases that people can get, particularly in the large intestine, as I'm going through the different stages, people can get polyps. Usually you have them removed when you get a colonoscopy. But people can also get pockets in their large intestine, which are called diverticulosis. If that pocket becomes infected or kind of food, bacteria, things get stuck in there, then that causes diverticulitis, which is like an attack. You'll feel it on the left side of your body. If it's ever happened, you would never forget because it can be very painful. But what you want to do to avoid both of those things, diverticulosis and diverticulitis, is you don't want to, we're going to have a little bit of toilet talk right before the food comes, but you don't want to strain. You don't want to have to strain when you're going to the bathroom. It's kind of like creating a lot of pressure in a closed space. And when you're straining a lot, it puts you at bigger risk for hemorrhoids, but also for these pockets in the large intestine. And I think once you have diverticulosis, it's not necessarily reversible. So you want to make sure that your bowel movements are easy. And as I'd said when we were talking about water, one of the easiest ways of making sure or helping to have better bowel movements is drinking enough water. I had a patient today who's been struggling with constipation for years, and I recommended that she drinks 3 cups, 3, of hot water as soon as she wakes up in the morning. And it seems like a small victory, but for the last week, she's had regular bowel movements without straining, etc. 3 cups of hot water first thing in the morning. There's something else that affects bowel health, and that's stress and anxiety. But before I talk about that, go ahead.
I was under the impression that hot liquids and cold liquids are not good for the gut.
Oh, okay. I've only heard of cold liquids not being good for the gut. If it's too hot, like boiling hot, it's not necessarily good for the esophagus, actually, which can eventually lead to something called Barrett's esophagus, and then over time can actually put you at risk for cancer. But in Chinese medicine and a lot of, let's say, Asian medicines, they say don't have a lot of cold water because it might affect the digestive juices. That's kind of the theory there. I've never heard don't have hot, but I have heard don't have extremely hot. Like I've seen people drink coffee where they can barely blow on it and they're sipping it. Definitely not good for the lining of the esophagus. Does anyone have any other questions? So how to have better bowel movements. I realize I should have spoken faster. But number 1, you want to have more water. Number 2, you want to increase your fiber, as we were already saying. If you're increasing your fiber, you increase your water. Number 3, that most people don't think of, but it's the most common thing that I've found with my patients with anxiety. They have a very difficult time going to the bathroom. I have patients who, since they were 10 years old, have had constipation, and they're 40 now. Their entire lives, constipation, because they had a traumatic event or they've had anxiety since they were a child. And anxiety and stress kind of activate the fight or flight response, which we talked about yesterday. With the fight or flight response, you're getting ready to run away from maybe a bear, a lion, etc., or to punch out something that's threatening to you. This is not the time to have to say, hold on a second, I just have to go and take number 2. I'll be right back in 15 minutes. So our bodies are created in a way where if you're in fight or flight or you're experiencing anxiety, that kind of cuts off the things that make having a good bowel movement possible. One of those is called motility or peristalsis. The same way we saw the stomach earlier doing those waves, a wave like that kind of happens in the large intestine. So there are muscles in the large intestine, and they are contracting and relaxing, and they're pushing that stool all the way across. But when you're really stressed, that same kind of contraction and relaxation doesn't happen. So your motility is compromised, and the food, the waste, is kind of sitting there. So one of the ways of having a better bowel movement, even if you're at the point where, okay, it's the next morning, you've been struggling, it's to just do breathing while you're on the toilet. So doing the breathing while you're on the toilet.
You mean deep breathing?
Doing breathing that's similar to the breathing that we did the other day. Maybe breathing for a count of 4 in your nose, breathing for a count of 7 out your mouth, and you might do 2 or 3 breaths like that. You start off first thing in the morning with hot water, not boiling hot, but it may have been boiled, but hot water up to 3 glasses. After that, you might get on the toilet, you practice the breathing in your nose, out your mouth. You want your nervous system to shift from stressed to rest and digest, to relax. As soon as the nervous system shifts, everything is going to start moving, and even that lower part of the rectal area, there's a sphincter there, that's going to relax as well, and then you're able to have a bowel movement. So if constipation is an issue for you, you want to practice those things. Increase your fiber, increase your water, do the breathing while you're in the bathroom. Have hot water as soon as you wake up. If you're thinking of other options and none of that works, and we're about to say a prayer for the food, if none of that works, one of the things that actually helps is blackstrap molasses. So here's the thing with the blackstrap molasses. I recommend taking the cup of hot water with a tablespoon of blackstrap molasses. It sounds like a lot, but that can be really effective. If it's not working first thing in the morning, take some blackstrap molasses at night. If you have type 2 diabetes, then that's not an option for you. But the blackstrap molasses is very effective. A lot of people just jump to X-Lax or some kind of laxative. Instead, I say, okay, what can you change? And why do you have the constipation in the first place? If it's stress and anxiety, then you want to target that instead of jumping right to laxatives. Yes, go ahead.
I have a couple of grandchildren that
Yes.
have constipation, and it's not from anxiety or anything else. It's because they're having too much fun and they hold it.
Oh, good
And
one.
it
Yes.
becomes so hard, and so it makes
Yep.
it harder. I've always been worried about fissures. So
Right.
how can you
Oh.
get them not to do it?
So actually holding it, thank you, I forgot about that. Getting into the habit of not answering when nature calls,
Yeah.
let's say, actually can set you up for constipation. I had a patient, and this will be the last thing that I say before we pray, or maybe we should pray first. So people probably want to eat. I heard a yeah. So let's bow our head for prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for this evening. Thank you for the wonderful food. Lord, thank you for the hands that have prepared it. We pray that you'll bless it, that it'll be blessed and be good for our bodies. We say things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for saying that. Do not hold it. So I had a patient who lived just outside of Toronto and was accustomed to going to the bathroom at home every day, and then had to start taking the bus, and after that had to start driving on the 401. So he didn't realize that when you drive on the 401, you get stuck in traffic at 7 o'clock in the morning. And that was around the time he had to go to the bathroom. And he really didn't like going anywhere except at his house. So he got into this habit of holding it. Before he left to get in the car, he would feel like his body was saying, it's time to go to the bathroom. But then he would hold it and try to hold it until he got to work. So that's at least an hour of driving in stressful traffic. And he was like a new driver. So when he got to work, he was stressed out, and then he couldn't find a bathroom he liked. Like, the story just kind of went on and on, but the whole thing began with holding it and not going when his body was saying to go. And after that, it just became like a habit, and his body stopped giving him that strong urge to go in the morning, and he ended up with severe constipation, and part of it was just in his mind, like this fear that he's going to have to go somewhere that he doesn't like. So he was never comfortable. So holding it, not a good idea. When nature's calling, try to go. I also had a patient who recently did a weight loss program with me. That was part of the issue. She was PSW at a home. So she's working night shift. Night shift is something else, also changes everything. But it never seemed to be a good time. So she got into the habit of holding it as well, and then ended up with severe constipation as well as hemorrhoids. And I told her to do exactly what I've said here. As soon as you wake up in the morning, have the hot water. And that started working, but I said, if it's not working the way that we would like, after that, go for a walk before work. Because motion, you could say, motion creates motion. So you have the hot water, you go for a walk if you can, and it's kind of like right after that, your body's relaxed, the bliss hormones have been secreted, and you are ready. So those are a few things that can help to solve constipation. As I've said, very important to go to the bathroom. You want the toxins out of your body. You want the cholesterol going out of your body as well. And you want constantly to be flushing the waste out, the waste products. Yes, go ahead.
Why do you think it is that the blackstrap molasses work?
Oh, good question. It's interesting. It's a little bit of an oxymoron because blackstrap molasses is actually high in iron. And iron is usually something that which makes me think of something else. Iron is something that usually constipates you, but it might maybe be the combination of the iron and the sugar together that causes kind of your stools to be a little looser. One of the other reasons why people might have constipation is just the medications that they're on. So iron tablets kind of traditionally cause people to have constipation, and then some supplements work the other way. Magnesium citrate usually cause loose stools. So if you're suddenly having issues with that and you never have before, you might check the different medications you're on to see, is my medication causing constipation or causing loose stools? Yes, go ahead.
With kids, when you're doing that, would you suggest they drink warm water in the morning or have this
I'd have a
molasses at night, or-
discussion with them saying, you know what, when you, it starts with the talk.
Yeah,
Um,
I've talked lots.
Oh, okay.
To make any-
When you get that urge, then go to the bathroom. You could do, I think the warm water in the morning is pretty benign, so they could do that. They're going to get that strong urge, so part of that is making sure that they're going to the bathroom. And then just increasing fiber, but with kids, I would say do it through complex carbohydrates, so increasing the vegetables that they're eating.
They hold it, what do you do?
I mean, with the warm water, it's going to kind of force them into a situation where they're not going to want to hold it.
Yeah, okay.
But constantly saying, you know, you want to go when nature's telling you to go. Was there another question? Yes. Yes, go ahead.
I remember reading that oxalate you mentioned in spinach, oxalic acid, that adding lemon, that it actually helps the spinach to be a little bit easier on our system or more absorbable. Can you? I don't know if that's true or not. I just read it somewhere.
Yeah.
Can you speak up? Because I've learned to like. I'm from Japan, so I usually
Okay.
like to
Ooh,
saute.
Shinryoku.
Shinryoku.
Do you know what that means?
Oh yeah, I walk bare feet all the time.
It's forced bathing.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, go ahead.
But I was taught that when I use vegetable oil to saute the spinach or greens, that it actually seals the vitamins rather than boiling it, or because their vitamins are water soluble, right? So
Right.
that's something I learned in Japan when I was in grade 5 in a cooking class. Like, you want to be sauteing the greens. It's more absorbable for your body. And I remember cooking spinach or sauteing spinach in my cooking class. So about the cooking, about the lemon, about the absorbability, if you can touch on that.
I'm just wondering if I have my slide of different combinations that help to pull out more nutrition. And I have a slide with broccoli plus lemon. Sauteing definitely better than boiling because when you're boiling, you're losing a lot of the vitamins and minerals. For spinach, broccoli, a lot of the leafy greens, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow where we talk about, and Thursday where we're talking about weight loss, but we'll also talk about specific foods. But you want to add, if you're adding lemon to it, and I do recommend putting lemon on the spinach or broccoli, especially if it's lightly steamed, that's going to pull out the iron that's naturally in the spinach and broccoli, so or the leafy greens, so you're getting a higher iron content. Whether or not it affects the oxalates, I'm not sure, but I know it affects not just the iron, but the absorption of the iron in the body. So you want to use some of the vitamin C. I do have a few slides tomorrow on the different combinations of things to do so you can get the highest nutrient content out of the food. I hope that answered some of your question, and some of those slides would be tomorrow as well. Does anyone have any other questions about digestion so far? No? How's the food? Good. Remember to eat slowly. Oh, it's extremely good. Awesome. We've got 2 thumbs up. Eat slowly so that you're going to digest it better. Chew and chew. Don't drink while you're eating it. And I guess you don't really have the option of, oh, maybe you do, eating the greens first and then eating everything else. Eat the bread last, if possible. Everyone's like, oh, but I've already started eating the bread. Just as we were talking about yesterday, we talked about eating order. So you want to eat the greens, the leafy greens first. After that, you eat the proteins. Maybe it was the very first day. After the proteins, you eat the fats. And the very last thing that you eat is the starch. So the very last thing might be the carbs, the bread, etc. But if you didn't do that tonight, you have the opportunity again tomorrow. That's the amazing thing about eating. You do it every day. So you can just get better and better at doing it. Here are some tips for better digestion, all in one slide. Before I put that tip there, though, since you're chewing right now, I think this is appropriate. You've got them, let's use them. So as you're eating, don't forget to chew and chew your food until it's like applesauce or like liquid in your mouth. Okay, overall tips for better digestion. Before we talk a little bit more about the microbiome. Tip number 1, do not worry. It goes with that song, Don't Worry, Be Happy. Do not worry, because worrying affects digestion. It affects, as I said, the amount of saliva that your body's going to produce. It affects the amount of hydrochloric acid. It affects the amount of pancreatic enzymes. In traditional Chinese medicine, the main emotion that affects digestion is worry. And it's also in traditional Western medicine as well, because worry kind of starts the fight or flight response that we talked about yesterday. Chronic stress, worry, ooh, I'm smelling that food now. got a lot of ghrelin happening here. Chronic stress, worry, and overthinking inhibit full digestive action. The liquid of digestion and in terms of Chinese medicine, the liquid is saliva. The main body part is the mouth. The noise that is supposed to be good for digestive organs is singing. Somebody said yesterday that they liked singing. Maybe singing helps to not worry, and then you'll have better digestion. So instead of worrying, you can sing. I said this. I now realize that that might be small for everyone to see, but stay upright after eating. In order to help the food stay down and not push up against the lower esophageal sphincter, stay vertical after eating. This goes with many things, though. Stay vertical after eating, or after eating, you might go for a walk. That helps with digestion. That helps burn the sugar. So if you have type 2 diabetes, that's a bonus. You're going to digest your food and burn the sugar as well. Motion helps motion. As I said, go for a walk. We call these digestive walks. After eating, you can wait for 15 minutes. This isn't the brisk walk that you're doing this isn't your exercise walk. This is a digestive walk to help you digest the food better. So go for a leisurely walk, but you still want it to be continuous, meaning you're not walking and stopping and texting, or you're constantly moving during that walk. Increase your fiber. Fiber helps to bind and carry away toxins that have built up in the body and have been sitting in the large intestine. Increase your fiber, but of course, when you increase your fiber, you want to increase your water. In terms of drinking water, try the water before the food. Don't drink the water with the food. Drinking sufficient water will help with full body hydration, and especially with elimination, as we just said. Increasing fiber without increasing water may exacerbate constipation, but do not drink your water with your meal, as we were saying at the beginning. You could drink, and I changed this. When I originally made this slide, I said 1 hour before, 1 hour after. And I think that would be optimal, but a lot of people forget, and 1 hour seems to be a long period of time, and the 1 hour after they finish eating, start doing something else, and the water bottle sits there, and you never do the after part. So instead of 1 hour before, 1 hour after, I now say about 20 minutes before, maybe 20 to 30 minutes after. And this way you can think of it as a water sandwich. You have water before, then you don't have any liquids, then you have water after. Yes?
If you're already drinking your 2.7 liters or whatever.
Yes.
What's the logic, the water after?
So that's something that I use with weight loss patients especially, and it kind of stops us from wanting to drink or eat anything else. So you're feeling a little more full, and then you're not going to reach for dessert kind of thing.
Benefits other than if you're not looking?
Yep. I did have a patient who had severe digestive issues, as well as constipation, bloating, gas, etc. I asked her to follow all of these tips, but one of the things she said made the biggest difference, I can't totally explain why, was drinking the water after. And she drank the water before, and when she started drinking the water after, she said that was the end of the gas, the bloating, and she had much better bowel movements as well. So I still have to do more research to find out why it worked, but for better digestion, that was the final thing that really tipped it over.
What do you think about juicing?
What do I think about juicing? It will be in the slides tomorrow, but I have a whole, at least 2 slides on the benefits of juicing. I think the only risk there is if you have type 2 diabetes, you want to be careful about the type of juice. Vegetable juice, much better. And you want to go for juices that aren't particularly sweet. And then depending on juicing as opposed to eating. So I actually do juicing about twice a year. I put myself on my own juice cleanse. I finished one right before coming to Lillooet. But that was juices and smoothies, but sometimes I'll do like 7 days of juicing. It's a great way of detoxifying. It helps with controlling cravings and controlling emotional eating. I wouldn't recommend that you just do it on your own. Like, better to talk to a professional about it. For the weight loss programs that we run in Toronto, we start every program with a 5-day juice detox. So we start with the juicing, and then we go to raw, and then 2 days of raw. A lot of people, that just doing that 7 days starts cleaning things up, and then we move on to plant-based food. So I'm very pro-juicing. Depends what are you drinking, and then what issues you had before, and you don't want it juice only. You still want to be chewing your food. You're welcome. Final tip, but I have another full slide. Talk about what's pleasant while you're eating. And in terms of digestion and the stress response that we were talking about yesterday, the best time to be nice to each other is at the table. I mean, you want to be nice to each other all day, every day. At the table. That is not the time to be like snarky and for all the sarcasm to come out, or if you've been upset with that person all day, be nice at the table so that you're stopping your nervous system from going into a fight or flight state, and you're not affecting the people around you, because when they hear negativity or arguments, they're hearing it, that's going to affect their nervous system. So pleasant talk at the table. Though the table is a place where everyone's together, it's not the best time to discuss controversial or acrimonious issues, hence causing more stress and poor digestion. Now, the best time to talk about those things, you might all sit together very pleasantly at the table, or let's say with your partner and something's been bugging you all day. Try not to think about it. Be pleasant. And afterwards, you wait 15 minutes and you say, you know what, hon, I think we should go for a walk. Now, that's the best time to talk about that thing. Why? Because as you're walking, there's something that happens when you're not facing each other and you're looking into each other's eyes. You're both facing one way. You say whatever it is. It's less stressful. But while you're walking, your brain is going to be secreting all of those wonderful bliss hormones. So even if it's a stressful conversation, your brain's secreting endorphins, some dopamine, some serotonin. Both of you are going to handle it better, and you don't have poor digestion based on that discussion. So pleasant during the meal, let it rip when you're walking, and this can lead to better digestion. Or even if it's not after the meal, best time to have those discussions, I'd say, when you're walking together. Some other tips for better digestion. I don't think I have some repeats here. As I've said, eat slowly. You can practice that right now. Chew your food thoroughly until it's like liquid in your mouth. Eat when you're calm. Digestion and worry do not go together. I'd said at the beginning of the meal that you could take a few moments to place gratitude in your mind. At the beginning of this meal, we prayed. It was kind of like interrupting what we were doing before, just creating that space for a little bit of calmness before you start eating. So it might be prayer. It might be just being quiet for a moment before you eat. It might be thankfulness. It might be thinking of where the food came from, which generates a feeling of gratitude and thankfulness. But you're taking a moment so that your nervous system can go into a parasympathetic state. As I said, it might also be breathing. Breathing slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, and shifts your nervous system into a parasympathetic state, and then you eat. And if you're doing the breathing before eating, best to do it with your eyes closed, so you can just focus on that breath and feeling calmer, and then eat. This is one of the reasons why the Shinobi breathing that we talked about yesterday, was effective for the women who were between the ages of 40 and I think 60 or 40 to 50, and they lost weight just by breathing before they ate. So you can do the prayer, you can do the gratitude, you can do the breathing, you can do everything, do all three, and might as well get the most benefit possible. Is there anybody here who practiced Sonobi breathing before you had breakfast or lunch today?
We're a bad bunch.
Oh, you're a bad bunch. This morning? All right. All right, let's give them a hand. You're done for the month? Amazing. So please remember, tomorrow you can practice, and that was particularly for women who were 40 to 60 and overweight, but it can help with anyone. The breathing before you ate. And with that type of breathing, it was actually they stretched while they were doing the in-breath. Sonobi breathing before eating. Eat until you are only 2/3 full. Do not overfill your stomach. Eat foods that take up more room in the stomach. You do not have to count calories. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Why do you want to eat foods that take up room in your stomach? It's kind of a tool for weight loss. So we'll talk about what that means, how it affects the brain, the chemicals, etc. Eating foods that take up a lot of room in the stomach. You can kind of keep that idea in mind to be explored tomorrow as we talk about weight loss. Okay, I think I do have some repeats here, so bear with me. Better digestion, you want to be in a state of rest and digest. This slide is probably the most succinct if you want to take a picture. Place thankfulness in your mind, slow it down. Tip number 4 is something I learned when I was working at a Chinese medicine health center in China, and also training, doing a medical martial arts program. And it is the idea of taking a pause. So I remember we were eating, at that time it was dinner, I was eating with chopsticks, and the Chinese medicine doctor in the middle of the meal just put his chopsticks down. And everybody got quiet. I was like, uh-oh, did we do something wrong? We're about to get a lecture. And he put his chopsticks down and he stayed, and he was quiet for a few minutes. Then he picked his chopsticks up again. I was like, okay, everybody picks up their chopsticks. We're eating. He put his down. We all put ours down. I'm like, okay, nothing happened. He picked it back up. We picked ours back up. Near the end of the meal, I said, what is going on? Like, why are you putting your chopsticks down? And he said he likes to put his chopsticks down to force himself to take a pause while he's eating. So he ate fairly slowly, but this was a way of slowing down his eating even more. So step number 4 here, put your fork or your spoon, or it might be your chopsticks, down to slow down your eating. And I've had patients who are fast eaters, and this is the only thing that works for them. They're eating. They remember, they'll put their fork down, then they'll pick it up. Of course, graduating to the point where they're eating slowly would be great, but it's a really good first step. Put your fork or your spoon or your chopsticks or whatever your utensil is down, and then that forces you to take a pause. As he said, the Chinese medicine doctor, take a pause while you're eating. Don't discuss contentious things during mealtime. Wait 15 minutes and then go for your walk. Don't lie down after eating, and I think I might have one more here. Eat until you're 2/3 full. Don't lie down after eating. Great way of preventing acid reflux. Yes?
Why 15 minutes after the meeting? Just get up and go for a walk.
Right. I think it gives you at least a little bit of time for your food to start digesting before you start moving and exercising. If it's 30 minutes, that's fine. I like 15 minutes because it's kind of that time period where, okay, I'm relaxed, my food start digesting, and before I get into anything else, I'm getting up and I'm walking. Half an hour after, 1 hour after, a lot of people forget. Yes, go ahead.
If I was going to use chopsticks to eat, I'd starve to death.
Oh, no. It's a good way of, that's a weight loss tool. One of the things that I encourage people to put in their diets is garlic. Not particularly for digestion, but this is more for immune health. So we're going to talk a little bit about immunity and food now before we get into the microbiome. We'll talk more about food tomorrow as we talk about weight loss. But garlic, how many people here like garlic? All right. How many people here eat raw garlic?
Oh,
All right. I'm going to drop the mic.
we're finished.
Awesome.
Do you actually know if this black garlic counts? It's not cooked, but it's like
It's aged, right? Is it aged but cooked and then aged?
warm, like aged in a warm, like maybe, yeah, it's not fermented, it's still
Yeah.
really sweet. I think it's like some of the carbohydrates started to be broken down.
Right.
Sweeter, it's definitely less like pungent.
Yeah. I have recommended garlic to a patient who didn't want to do the black garlic to a patient who didn't want to do the raw garlic. But I haven't done enough research on it to see exactly what's done to make it black. Is it heated in any way?
It is, but not hot. It's like it's like a yogurt
Okay.
maker warm. Is my understanding. I've never made it, but it's like warm and dry.
Because there's an enzyme in the garlic. There are a few ways of eating the garlic to get the most out of the garlic, and the healing property in the garlic is called allicin. And allicin actually starts as, I think it's allinase, and you need an enzyme, which is myrosinase, to convert it into allicin. When you heat the garlic, it burns off the myrosinase, so that conversion doesn't happen, and then you don't get the allicin. So if they heat it with the black garlic, but not to the point where it would burn off myrosinase, then it would still be effective. This is the reason why I asked who's eating raw garlic. Usually when I say that, nobody puts their hands up, so it's great. But it would depend on how hot the garlic gets before they start the process of, I guess, aging the black garlic. So I can look it up to find out. As long as that conversion's still happening and the allicin in the garlic is still like of a high content, then it would be effective. And the garlic is effective as an antimicrobial, a natural antimicrobial, or you might say antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal property. Yes? Raw garlic, exactly. So after you heat the garlic, it's going to burn off the enzyme that causes the conversion of allicin or allin, A-L-L-I-N, to I've suddenly just forgotten, allicin, A-L-L-I-C-I-N, and then it's not going to have a high level of allicin in it. If I said that correctly, yes.
But does cooked garlic still have some benefits? Like it shows up in so many things.
Yeah, it tastes great, but yeah, it has high in sulfur, but it's not going to have like the antimicrobial, antiviral, or antifungal benefits. Did someone have another question? Yes.
What about the garlic scapes when you're dehydrating them? The garlic scapes?
I don't know what a garlic scape is.
You can see the
Oh, the green thing?
top there.
Okay.
They have a very, very high garlic taste to them.
Yeah.
And I think they have the same properties as garlic.
Okay. I actually never eat them. So this is the interesting thing about dehydrated garlic. Because it's not burning off that enzyme, then it's fine. But in order for that conversion to begin, the garlic actually has to be damaged. So when you chew the garlic, you're damaging the garlic and the conversion starts. If you're just eating it, and I mean, as long as you're chewing it and it's raw, I guess even if it's the tail, the scape, you're still going to have that happen. But once it's heated, that's where you're not getting these benefits from. Yes?
How much garlic?
How much garlic?
Yes.
Ooh, to the point where you're not antisocial. It kind of depends. So I recommend garlic based on what the condition is. If it's just for overall immunity, like boosting your immunity, there's actually a formula that I kind of created that is something you can do every day. So you take 2 or 3 cloves, so it doesn't have to be a lot, and you're crushing those cloves. So then that starts this process of the conversion to allicin. But not a lot of people like to take about, let's say, 3/4 of a teaspoon to a teaspoon. That's the amount that I recommend of raw crushed garlic. So there's a type of honey which is also antimicrobial, antibacterial, antifungal. It's a little bit expensive, but it's called Manuka honey. So I recommend taking a little bit of the Manuka honey and stirring it in, unless you have type 2 diabetes. In that case, you'd be having the raw garlic on its own, about 3/4 of a teaspoon per day. But you can stir in some of the Manuka honey, let it sit overnight, and then that becomes what you take every day. That's for boosting your immune system, about 3/4 of a teaspoon. Now, if you're already sick, then I really bump that up. If it's the beginning of a cold, you might have even up to 4 cloves a day. If you're already into a cold and already sick, 4 or 5 cloves per day. And then you could, even if you have a food processor, you can take those 5 or 6 cloves and then combine it with something like grapefruit and maybe a little bit of the grapefruit rind and a little bit of onion. Make it all mushed together in the food processor and have a tablespoon or 2 of that per day. And that will help you. It will speed up the process. But the main ingredient there is garlic. And then the grapefruit as well. Yes, go ahead, Eileen.
My older kids, when they would come home with a bit of a cough or something,
Mhm.
I give them a tablespoon of garlic, crushed garlic,
Okay.
a tablespoon of lemon juice, and a tablespoon of honey. They were over the cold.
Every
They
time,
never
that's
got-
it?
They never missed school.
A tablespoon of garlic, a tablespoon of honey, a
The
tablespoon
honey was last.
of lemon.
Gar-
Oh, they're
garlic,
like going one,
garlic, lemon,
one,
and honey.
one?
Yeah, one at a time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's very similar to what I just said. In the food processor, put all those things together, but you're just doing a tablespoon at a time. Go ahead.
I guess about a year ago, I soaked the raw garlic cloves that I grew in the garden into our local honey.
Okay.
So I just have this honey dipped garlic that sat in my cupboard
Yes.
in the dark. And I guess I don't know where I read it from, but it's really delicious, but I let it sit for quite long. So just remind me that I have to make another batch next year because I'm running out of it. But I guess if it's not cooked,
Yep.
it's raw, and
Yep.
you chew it, it's a little more pleasant to chew on, and it's like
With the
something
honey.
that if you're feeling a little bit like coming down with a cold or
Yep.
something, I think that's what I was told, that it's kind of like a prevention medicine, or if you're coming down with something.
Yeah, same kind of idea. You were saying that you put the garlic with the honey, but you'd let it sit
For months.
for quite a while.
Yeah.
Months.
Yeah.
That might like speak to the process of fermenting it a little bit, and then when you're getting sick, you have a little bit of that. Same kind of idea as the garlic and the Manuka honey. I only let sit overnight, but that's more like you take a little bit of that every day. But yeah, so similar. Yes, go ahead.
I actually wanted to ask Rachel, do you eat the honey or the garlic itself? Or both?
It's mixed together.
I just stick a fork and take the one
The clove
one
out
clove out, and then I haven't really looked into the honey because I was after the garlic.
and Put the honey in your
But I guess I could just,
tea, I guess, or something.
I guess I could, thank you. I didn't even think of it. I could use it for tea, but then I also heard that honey, if it's heated or it loses its
Mm.
enzyme. Does
Mhm.
anybody know anything about
Mm.
that? It's better to eat raw. It's kind of depressing because I've been having honey and tea forever, like
Oh,
for decades.
yes. Yep. I recommend the Manuka honey raw and blending it, and then you're having that every day.
So
Yep.
my other question, if anybody knows, is it's heating the honey, does it destroy and make it less beneficial?
I'm not sure. I
Didn't
don't
they find
know.
honey in King Tut's too?
Because just the heat is gonna kill any,
Yeah.
enzymes in that. But I bet you there's still a lot of goodness in it.
I don't know if heating it to the point where, like, putting it in tea, if that's hot enough, or if it's more like heating it. Usually what destroys enzymes is more like the heat from a pan. Boiling, sauteing, frying, yeah, exactly.
Or in baking, I mean, people use honey in baking.
Hmm.
Is that kind
That's probably just for sweetness. Yeah, did somebody else have a hand? Okay, so we talked a lot about garlic. As I was saying, I'd recommend it a little bit of the garlic, maybe with the Manuka honey if you want it to go down nicer. But if you're using the Manuka honey, you're still getting the antimicrobial, antifungal, antiviral properties. A little bit of that every day to boost your immune system. Garlic is incredibly beneficial to your immune system. It offers this triple whammy: antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal. You could be eating it every day. One of the best things is that bacteria, virus, and yeast build up no resistance to it. Meanwhile, with synthetic antibiotics, the bacteria, the viruses, etc., are building up a resistance. So you can always opt for garlic instead. Oops. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, I double clicked. Sorry, bear with me. We're going to see that again. One click only. This is what happens when you put too many action points in. For optimal benefits, garlic should be fresh and it should be crushed. When fresh garlic is chopped or crushed, the allin, A-L-L-I-I-N, in the garlic is released. It interacts with the enzyme allinase, which converts allin into allicin. The formation of allicin is complete in approximately 6 seconds. It's what's responsible for the distinct odor of the garlic. The allicin in garlic is a chemical that is an anti-carcinogen as well. Anti-carcinogen is kind of like saying an anti-cancer compound. It has also been shown to lower LDL. LDL is known as the bad cholesterol. It's been shown to lower total cholesterol, lower blood pressure, as we talked about the very first day, I think. The way that it lowers blood pressure is through thinning the blood. However, if you're on a blood thinner already, then doing the crushed garlic daily, as I recommended, those two things might not go because your blood could get too thin. So people don't think of foods as medicine, but a lot of different types of foods are medicine, and they might not go with the medicine that you're taking. So be careful of blood thinners and garlic, or blood thinners and turmeric, or even blood thinners and too much onions. There are a lot of different foods and spices that thin the blood. Blood thinners and fish supplements, like fish oils, also thins the blood as well. So garlic is one of those things. Don't take it every day, as I just said, to bump up the immune system if you're on a blood thinner. Garlic can also reduce your risk of blood clots and stroke, lower homocysteine, and even prevent insect bites, including mosquito bites, tick bites. They don't like the smell. The use of garlic and garlic-based extracts has been linked to decreased incidence of cancer in epidemiological studies. So I got that from a study that I was reading called The Anti-Cancer Potential of Homemade Fresh Garlic Extract is related to increased endoplasmic reticulum stress. Did you have a question?
Yeah, is there a safe level of garlic, raw garlic?
For the blood thinners? I mean, you could have it maybe 2 or 3 times a week instead. When I'm recommending garlic to a patient, usually I do recommend like the honey and the garlic, or making something that you're putting in the food processor. But usually, depending on where they are, I might jump straight to a supplement. And that's a supplement that is super high in allicin. And if they are on a blood thinner or anything like that, I'll say limit it to maybe 2 times a week, 3 times a week. Don't have the garlic every day, and don't have a lot of cloves of garlic. Yes, go ahead.
Is there any value in the spices, like when you buy garlic powder or chopped garlic? Is there any value in that product?
So is there any value in garlic powder? Oh, you mean the garlic powder that you use as a, for taste? That you sprinkle on?
You put it on your eggs or soup
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah, though I don't eat eggs. But I think that garlic powder, I think it's been cooked, if I'm right. I don't think it's based on raw garlic.
Oh, yeah.
But there is value in a garlic supplement that is based on a powder. So some of those supplements can be very effective. But the flavoring garlic, I think that's cooked and then made into a powder, and then you put it on. Yes.
I just Googled the black garlic.
Black garlic,
It
yes.
has less allicin, but it has more of a compound called S-allocystine that helps your body absorb allicin.
Oh, okay.
Might still be
Right.
overall.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Less allicin, but more allicystine. That's going to help you absorb the allicin that is in it. Okay. So there's still allicin. Might not be as effective, like in the amount of allicin as. Oh, the black garlic. Yes. Though you can add the Manuka honey, and then it becomes a little bit nicer. The product, as I was saying, that I like to use, it's called Allimax, Allimax. Not that I was a sponsor of Allimax. But I find with supplements, it's hard to know what supplement is the most effective when it comes to garlic, what supplement has the highest amount of garlic, and that supplement's really high quality and has a very high amount of allicin in it. What else can you eat that will help bump up your immune system? And I'm going to say a few things here that you might not be expecting. The very first one is not something I would recommend if you have type 2 diabetes, but it's papaya. And the lower one is pineapple. And not only do these 2 fruits help to bump up your immune system, but they help with digestion. Some fruits, such as pineapple and papaya, have incredible enzymes in the foods, and they're healing enzymes, which are sensitive to heat. I know most people are not normally eating a fried or sautéed pineapple. I have had that before in Chile. It's very good. Or fried or sautéed papaya. You don't want either of these to be heated. Raw pineapple, raw papaya in your diet can be very beneficial. If you have type 2 diabetes, I wouldn't recommend eating either of these, especially not if they're very ripe, because they become really sugary, very sweet. Pineapple contains an enzyme called bromelain. Is there anyone here who takes a digestive enzyme? Okay. Only one person. I was expecting more. So one of the key components in digestive enzymes, if you read the ingredients, normally it's a blend, but usually there's bromelain and papain. And bromelain and papain actually come from the papaya and from the pineapple. So those digestive enzymes, you can get them in the fruit. Yes. Of course, not to the same degree, but yeah.
Does the papaya, like does green papaya, ripe?
Overly ripe, especially if someone has type 2 diabetes, wouldn't recommend it. But I think just to the point where it's orange. I don't know if it's young. I'm pretty sure the enzyme's still in it. There's some interesting things about about papain in the papaya and bromelain in the pineapple. Bromelain is the more commonly used digestive enzyme than papain. But the bromelain is a natural anti-inflammatory. It can help to relieve sinus problems and improve digestion. It's a natural protein digesting enzyme. When I first found this out, I thought, oh, maybe this is one of the reasons why they put pineapples on pizza with pepperoni. Of course, I don't recommend eating any of those. But even in Chinese cooking, they'll have like a pineapple chicken. And I thought, oh, that's great. You put the pineapple and the chicken together, and the pineapple helps with the digestion of the chicken, because the papain, the bromelain in the pineapple helps with breaking down proteins. Not that I recommend that dish either, but I did think it was interesting. So the bromelain in the pineapple helps relieve sinus problems, helps to improve digestion. It is a natural protein digesting enzyme, meaning it helps to break down protein. It also helps with swelling, helping to reduce soreness and aching muscles. It has been taken for the swelling, inflammation, and pain of arthritis. And what about papaya? Papaya also contains an anti-inflammatory enzyme called papain, helps to break down protein. It's been used to relieve sore throat, reduce pain and inflammation, help with digestion, can ease constipation, and bloating, eases muscle soreness, and may help relieve the symptoms of shingles. So 2 things that you can add into your diet to help with better digestion might be pineapple and papaya. As I said, and I'll reiterate, but not to be had if it's overly ripe and if you have type 2 diabetes. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, go ahead.
So canned pineapple had most likely TBD. So would you be getting any of the benefits of canned?
Oh, canned pineapple. Ooh. I'm not sure what the process of canning is. They're probably cooking the pineapple if it's canned? Yeah. So probably burning off the enzymes. So raw would be better. Yes.
My hesitation for years, because I knew about these benefits of papaya and pineapple, especially pineapple, I'm just hearing that there's so much DDT. Like there's,
Oh, the way they spray it?
well,
Right.
I don't think we have organic pineapple, and so my question was, does the pesticides in the pineapple, so I usually stay away from it, but does it outweigh
Right.
the downfall of pesticides? Would it outweigh the benefits of still eating some
Right.
non-organic, sprayed or?
I think there's probably organic pineapple
I just haven't.
As a protective barrier. But then,
But it's in the soil, right? If it's already in the soil when it's the pesticides.
well, what I was going to say is, what does organic mean? But that's a whole other discussion. But if you have the option of organic or non-organic, I mean, a lot of people think it's not worth it because it's not really organic and it's such a small percentage. But I generally say if you have the option of organic versus non-organic, then go for the organic. It's probably better if there's honesty there. It's a little more expensive. But if it's, so it's hard to say what is the level of the pesticides in it. If it's so high, then is it even worth it to put it in your body?
And as long as we don't overdo it, right?
Yeah.
Moderation, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do a cleanser.
Some people,
down.
this is one of the reasons why some people go for supplements instead of the food, because that way they are avoiding the pesticides and putting those toxins in their body. I usually say go with food instead of supplements unless you actually have a condition, and then when you have the condition, you're using supplements instead. But organic versus non-organic, is our food fresh? Is it clean? Is it slightly poisoned? I don't even know if we're going to have a presentation on that. Yes.
I just know that there's a little bit of a hack with pesticide, things with pesticide fruit and stuff, like my sister-in-law, young kids, she soaks everything in alkaline water.
Yep.
And then that can actually draw out some, so that's just a little hack if anybody has it, like the filtering machine that do that, so if that's one method. And my last question was, Would you be touching on intermittent fasting at all? Have you already?
Tomorrow? I mentioned it slightly, but as we talk about weight loss, we'll talk a lot about intermittent fasting tomorrow and Thursday.
But even not just for weight loss, but even just for health benefits.
Tomorrow. I totally just forgot what I was going to say. No, that's okay. I don't know. Maybe it'll come back. So we're going to move on to the microbiome, but it's going to bug me now. Oh, the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. So in terms of organic fruits and vegetables, and I think I have that in my slide on food, so it's coming up. There are different, the porousness of fruits and vegetables varies. So there are some fruits or vegetables that absorb pesticides more than other fruits or vegetables. So the ones that absorb pesticides more, they're called the dirty dozen. If you'd like to look them up tonight before they're on my slide tomorrow, you can look it up. And then foods that don't absorb the pesticides as readily, they're called the clean 15. So I will have a list of the dirty dozen and the clean 15 tomorrow. But when you're making these decisions about, okay, should I buy organic or should I not buy organic, you can keep that in mind, especially if you have like a tight budget for groceries. You could say, you know what, I'm not going to, not that I'm recommending not buying organic, but sometimes finances don't really afford that. So you could say, for the clean 15, I'm buying non-organic. For the dirty dozen, I'm always buying organic. And that's kind of a way of deciding, trying to get the best of both worlds. But I'll have both of those lists tomorrow. But I don't know, maybe your homework would be to look up the clean 15 and the dirty dozen for tomorrow. And I will ask. All right, we started by talking about the microbiome. We're going to end for the next little while about talking about the microbiome. And now that you know more about digestion, now we're going to talk about how the microbiome affects not just digestion, but also immune function. And then we'll have a little bit of time for questions. And I think we may or may not end a little bit early today. The microbiome, oops. It is an honor to be here. But I've got the Star Trek Enterprise in the back there because we're boldly going to where not a lot of people go to, which is talking about the microbiome and the bugs in our gut. But it is becoming better known, and people are talking a little more now about how our lifestyle affects the microbiome. I started by talking about the gut-brain axis, just to put that idea in that the health of our gut, even the health of our digestion, the health of our microbes affects the way we think, it affects our emotions, it affects our mental health, it affects our immunity, it affects so many different aspects of our lives that we don't realize. Don't do that. So that was a picture of sleepy people, which hopefully isn't you. So having a healthy digestion and a healthy gut is very important for overall health. We have thoughts that are affected by our microbiome. You could say negativity versus positivity, cravings, addiction, mood, immunity, skin health, weight, and it goes on and on. There's an entire universe that's alive in our gut that we're not really familiar with, that we're getting more and more familiar with and becoming aware that it's touching all of these different areas of our life experience. When does the building up of the microbiome begin? It doesn't even begin here. It begins before this point. So I have a quick question for everyone. Is there anyone here, or how many people here were born from a cesarean section? You don't know? Okay. All right. That is 0, which is amazing, because usually there's a hand or two. Not that I'm always asking that question, but I might be thinking it. Just because whether we were born from a cesarean section or you went through a natural birth where you're going through the vaginal canal can actually affect areas of your life or health for nearly your whole life. I know. I mean, there are things that you have to work on if you're a cesarean baby, let's say, that you don't have to work on if you had a natural birth. So where does the development of the microbiome happen? It happens, oops, okay, that slide is, nope. Oh. Okay, it starts happening right here. The development of our immune system and our microbiome happens in utero, and then it really comes into force after the baby is born. So how many people here were breastfed? I don't, you might not know. Okay, maybe I'll ask, how many people here definitely know they were not breastfed? One? Okay. Were you breastfed?
No,
No.
just for tried, but it didn't work apparently.
Okay, so it was formula? So breastfeeding is also part of developing a good microbiome, but I want to go back to what's happening here. So after, of course, if there's anybody here who has had a child, this looks familiar to you. When the baby is being born, the baby goes through the woman's vaginal canal. So in the vaginal canal, there are all kinds of good bacteria that the baby's swallowing, that's going in the nose, surrounding the eyes, in the mouth. So if that mother is healthy and has good bacteria or a good microbiome, that part of that microbiome is in that vaginal tunnel, you could say, and the baby's getting all of that as it goes through. First step towards a stronger immune system, towards possibly being a happier person, happens in the birthing process. Isn't that interesting? And then when you're breastfed, then you're getting more of that positive, these positive, healthy immune boosting elements from your mom as well. So breastfeeding, very important as well. And of course, then you're at the point of being a healthy baby, hopefully continuing to be breastfed. I want to go back to here one more time because there are other things that happen here, let's say shortly before the birth, that can also affect the immune system of the baby. Oh, all right, I didn't even have to ask. Stress. So during the birth, it's normally a stressful period, but even if you go back to in utero, let's say the last 4 or 5 months of your pregnancy, if you are having a very stressful time in your life, I'll ask you, what are the hormones of stress that we talked about yesterday? Cortisol, lots of cortisol and adrenaline, and your body and bloodstreams being flooded by cortisol and adrenaline, the baby's nervous system is being flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. They've actually done, so that baby is born with a higher proclivity or risk of mental health conditions such as anxiety, bipolar disease, etc. They've done studies on babies who were born during the Depression. They've done studies on babies who were born during the Dutch famine. So women who were pregnant at that time and taking samples, like blood tests, etc., of the babies, and then how many of those babies as adults, young teens, had mental health conditions, and there's a disproportionate babies who were born after the Holocaust, mothers who were pregnant during, Jewish mothers pregnant during the Holocaust, disproportionate amount of mental health conditions due to the high levels of stress hormones while the mother is pregnant. So having a stronger immunity, healthier microbiome, and also, let's say, more healthier mental health all starts here when the mother is pregnant. And then the baby goes through the birth canal, and then you're breastfeeding, etc. You're building up that baby's microbiome. So we're looking at it here. With microbiome, you have the fetal microbial transfer that's happening in the birth canal. There's contact with the different elements, the microbiome in the birth canal through the skin, in the mouth, nose, eyes, and then breastfeeding. And then after that point, it's what are you feeding your baby and what are you eating, especially if you're breastfeeding, diet, and then antibiotic exposure early in life. So before the age of 2 years old, whether or not that baby was exposed to antibiotics, all of these things affect the composition of the baby's microbiome. Yes?
So I had the most stressful pregnancy ever.
Okay.
And then my daughter came 3 months early. So she was in the NICU. She had 2 rounds of IV antibiotics. She never breastfed. She
Wow.
was C-section. What you
Oh,
would do
wow.
for her.
She was 550 grams when they.
Yeah, she was like a 26-weeker. So
Wow. Does she have anxiety now?
horrible. Yeah, this is the kid who wakes up every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's exactly what I was saying. But then the question is, okay, what to do now? And how old is she?
She's 8.
So you want to focus on bumping up her microbiome and the good strains. Is she on probiotics?
I gave her some when I first brought her home from the hospital. They wouldn't let me give it to her in the NICU. It wasn't studied or whatever. But I gave her some bio Gaia at one point.
Okay. And now?
I haven't since then. She's also an incredibly picky eater, so I can't get her to eat anything weird.
Right. So sauerkraut is out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But would she be open to taking a probiotic supplement?
Yeah, if I mixed it with something, probably without her knowing.
Okay, because you can open the capsule and put the powder in something. Hopefully she's not watching this on Facebook. But you could open that up and then she could have a probiotic every day. You also want to kind of feed her, I think I have a list of prebiotic foods. So for the healthy and friendly flora she already has, that's the beneficial bacteria. You want to give her a diet that's high in prebiotics, so they're eating a lot and reproducing. And then on the other end of that, that's probiotics, where you're basically populating her gut microbiome with the actual good bacteria.
Prebiotics are like fiber.
Mostly fiber-rich foods, yeah. And then you want to avoid anything that's going to kill off the healthy bacteria. I mean, at 8, I have a list of them in this presentation. At 8, she's probably not doing a lot of the things like alcohol. Definitely kills the good bacteria. So often when people have been drinking alcohol for a certain period of time, then they have digestive issues. Antibiotics also kill off the good bacteria, but a lot of doctors now are recommending probiotics after the antibiotics. Of course, you don't want to take them at the same time because the antibiotic is going to kill the probiotic. So you want a certain number of hours afterwards or after the round of antibiotics, then you take the probiotics. Stress, something to work on, kills off the good bacteria in the microbiome. So that's probably an ongoing challenge, maybe, with anxiety, keeping the cortisol levels down, the stress levels down as well. Maybe breathing, there are certain musics, some of the things that we talked about. And we can talk more about what would help. But just starting with the prebiotics and the probiotics, like what's going to feed the bacteria, how do I populate the microbiome?
Is there like a probiotic brand or style that you recommend? I always feel like the ones that are refrigerated, are they actually any good?
They're supposed to be alive, but I've recommended probiotics that don't have to be refrigerated, that aren't as expensive, and they've been very effective as well. There are a lot of probiotic foods, as you know, but it sounds like she might not want to eat them that much. Like fermented coconut yogurt is great as well. It's a little bit sour, but that's also great for the microbiome, so she might enjoy that. Maybe just with a drizzle of maple syrup to make it kind of go down a little bit better. But thank you for saying that, because all the things I just said are exactly what happened. And then when that person becomes a little bit older, anxiety levels are higher. There are a few other things that you're at risk for. One of them is obesity. Because the microbiome actually helps with our weight and helps us to remain or to keep homeostasis with our weight. So one of the risks of C-section is being obese as an adult, as well as I said, some of these mental health risks and factors as well. So this is why it's so important if you're pregnant and about to have a baby, if as much as possible, but not always possible, to have a calm pregnancy and then a natural birth. But as we were saying, if that hasn't happened, then you want to focus on environmental factors and then your diet. So environmental factors, as well as having low stress, using a lot of calming techniques, and then having a diet that's high in prebiotics and probiotics as well. This is what we want to do. We want to have a body where you're exposed to viruses and bacteria and your body can say back off and you don't get sick. Go play in the dirt is something that my immunology professor from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine told us all to do. And she also said that she encouraged her 4-year-old to play in the dirt of the soil plants. I'm looking at that plant there. So that they would build up a stronger immune system. Some people think this is a fallacy. It's called the hygiene hypothesis. But they have found that children who are exposed to animals, so kids that grow up with dogs or cats, or kids that grow up on farms where they're exposed to a lot of dirt and a lot of animals, tend to have a stronger immune system than kids that live in a more sterile environment and don't have a pet. Yep.
Asthma, have you heard that? Asthma is less common in countries where people have pets and
Right.
been more sterile.
Yeah. I haven't heard that, but I'm not that surprised, just because you're building up such a strong immune system by that exposure. So one of the things might be, do you have a pet?
Yeah, we have chickens, cats, dogs,
Okay.
and have her whole life. I think, yeah, her immune system's good.
Right. Okay. Well, at least she's got a strong immune system, which is what we're talking about here, which is one of the things that happens when your microbiome is not balanced. You want an immune system that adapts to the bacteria and the viruses that you are exposed to. I think I'm going to go back a little bit to explain where the microbiome is and what it is. So basically, we have 3 times more bacterial cells in the microbiome than our own cells. There are up to 1,000 species of bacteria. So when it comes to probiotics, if someone has a specific condition or disease, then I might recommend a probiotic that has certain strains, because different strains affect different diseases in different ways. If it's just for overall health and overall population of the microbiome, then it doesn't really matter. But if it's a particular condition, then studies show that different strains are more effective. So it depends on the condition. The genes in our microbiome outnumber the genes in our genome by about 100 to 1. We have 100,000 billion microbes in the intestine. The interesting thing is you have 1,000 billion viable microbes on the skin. As I was saying yesterday when I was talking about water and keeping the skin nicely hydrated, we actually have a microbiome like a friendly flora layer just on the outside of our skin. So using a lot of hand sanitizer is killing that off. I'm not saying that it's not needed, but you don't want to overdo it. We have friendly flora in our tears, in the mucus, in our nose, in our mouth, on the skin, in our gut. The total weight of intestinal microbiota is about 1.5 kilograms. That's a lot. I heard about a recent maybe documentary on Netflix that's about the microbiome and the gut. Has anybody seen it? I know it doesn't sound as thrilling as like, yeah, I'm going to sit down and watch a movie about the gut microbiome. But in this movie, what they did was there was a woman who had a fecal transplant. You can guess what that is. Fecal as in fecal matter. We'll get to why that's important. But basically, she had poo from one person placed up her rectum to replace her own poo. And this is something that is done for certain diseases because if someone has a very healthy microbiome, a lot of that good bacteria is in their stool. And if you put that stool into somebody else, that good bacteria will then go up and populate their gut. I know you didn't, you thought the toilet talk was done. And then through populating their gut, then they become cured. But what they found was she was using the stool of somebody who had bad acne, and she had severe digestive issues, so her digestive issues went away, but then she got acne. All of that to say is that the microbiome is present in our stool, and feeding the microbiome so that we have a healthy microbiome can then regulate all these other things in our life and in our life experience. About 50% of the fecal mass is bacterial biomass, so about half of your stool is microbiome material. Microbiota produce between 2 to 4 liters of gas per day, so it's not necessarily you that's producing the gas, it might be the microbiome. But having said that, one of the other reasons why people have a lot of gas is when they're eating, a lot of people eat quickly and you take in a lot of gas. So it's not a lot of air. So it's not just the microbiome. Okay, where is the microbiome? As I said, in the oral cavity, in the respiratory tract, in the GI tract, in the genitourinary tract, and also on your skin. You have good bacteria all over on the inside and out of your body. And so you want to do as much as possible to keep that those bacterial populations strong and heavily populated. The normal human microbiota from infant to adult, 7:20. One moment. Okay, I said before 7 o'clock, but the intestinal microbiota acquires adult characteristics, is fully formed by about 2 or 3 years old. Which doesn't mean that beyond that, there aren't things that you can do to for the health of your microbiome. But basically, like your foundational microbiome is already formed when you're a child. This process is driven by epigenetic factors and the intake of major food groups by the time you're 3 years old. Epigenetics, meaning your environment, what's around you, and what's around you affects what's inside of you and the way that your genes kind of perform. I won't go through all of the different strains in all of the different areas, but as you can see, you have different strains of microbiota in the small intestine, in the large intestine, in the stomach. I do have H. pylori there, and I have to say this actually isn't my slide. This was from a professor's lecture on the microbiome. H. pylori is not a good bacteria. It is a bad pathogenic bacteria that is found in the stomach that eventually can lead to stomach cancer. And it can also lead to ulcers. And a lot of the population has H. pylori and doesn't know about it. It's when the H. pylori becomes very heavily populated that you'll end up with an ulcer. They used to think that ulcers were caused by stress. Now they know that ulcers are caused by H. pylori. But when we're stressed, our immune system is blunted, so we don't have as robust an immune system. That gives the H. pylori an opportunity to overpopulate. So there is a connection, you could say, between stress and ulcers through the activity of H. pylori. We also have microbiota in the ileum, in all areas in small intestine, as well as the large intestine. So I think I have a breakdown of the small intestine and large intestine. And I was going to ask you a question, but the answer is right there. How long do you think the small intestine is? And the answer is there. The small intestine is 20 feet long. That's long. And the transit time, how long does it take the food to go through the small intestine? 2 to 4 hours. The small intestine, as I was saying, as I was talking about digestion, that's the place where a lot of your nutrient digestion happens. It's the site of your major immune functionality, endocrine functionality, enteric neural functionality, which is basically like the gut-brain axis. A lot of that communication happens from the small intestine. Fewer bacteria are located in the small intestine, greater numbers located in the large intestine, and it is the site of most activity of most probiotics. So when you're taking probiotics, most of the probiotics are going into the small intestine and becoming active in the small intestine. How long, before I put the answer up, how long do you think the large intestine is? 8 feet, okay. 5 feet, pretty good. You think it's longer? 3 feet? It is, if I'm right, here we go, 4 feet long. So 5 feet was really close. Someone said 3 feet. So it's between 3 and 5 feet, which is around 4 feet. So if you think of the small intestine, 20 feet long, and the large intestine, only 4 feet long, it makes sense when you see the gut with all the small intestine wrapped up inside the large intestine. It makes sense when you're thinking of absorption, because you want the food to be in the small intestine going through that entire tract with the villi, so there's more opportunity for the food to be absorbed and out into the bloodstream. Large intestine, only 4 feet long. There's a very slow transit time, 18 hours to 90 hours in the large intestine. You want to, so this is one of the reasons why we talk so much about constipation, because the food could just, the waste, let's say, it could sit there for a long, long time. You want that action of peristalsis to be happening in the large intestine to move things along. I won't go through, again, the tips for constipation that we've already talked about tonight, but if you miss that part, then please stay until the end and I can talk to you about it. Minimal absorptive action actually happens in the large intestine. You want a strong small intestine because that's where absorption happens. A large intestine is the site of some immune functionality, some endocrine functionality, some neural functionality, but really the small brain is in the small intestine. There's less disruption by most antibiotics in the large intestine. Most antibiotics are working on the small intestine, which is also where the probiotics go. This is the reason why you don't want the antibiotics and probiotics to be going there together. There are huge microbial numbers that are dominated, very high potency for probiotics. You need very high potency probiotics to yield effects in the large intestine. And this is the site of the major activity of prebiotics. So when we saw the large intestine during the digestion slides, I said that the bacteria in the large intestine are eating up the fiber. This is the place where they're feeding on what you fed them. So a lot of that fiber, a lot of the prebiotics are feeding the good bacteria in the large intestine. So that's the site where a lot of prebiotic activity occurs. If you choose to take probiotics, then what does the probiotic do in the microbiome? Is it worth taking probiotics or not? And I think I have, hopefully around here, a slide of what not to do and what to do to boost the microbiome. But is it worth taking probiotics? I would say it depends on the situation. We're starting at, okay, number 1. Benefits of probiotics. They maintain and enhance the normal function of the intestinal mucosa. Earlier I had talked about something called leaky gut. And I said that you don't have tight junctions in the mucosal lining of the intestines. So taking probiotics can help to make those junctions tighter. Provides non-immunological protection against infection. It can be effective against, I'll say, candida as the main thing. Stimulates the maturation and balancing of the immune system at birth, which we've already talked about. But if it's beyond birth, then there are other things you can do. For babies who did not have a good balanced microbiome at birth, often this is one of the reasons why kids have allergies, eczema, GI conditions, etc. It helps to regulate and prime the immune system for your whole life, meaning that you have a healthy immune response and natural defenses, maintaining healthy cytokine activities. Cytokines are these little chemical messengers. Many of them are cause inflammation levels to go higher, so you want that to be controlled. A good microbiota and also probiotics can help with healthy weight management, glucose homeostasis, meaning the controlling of type 2 diabetes or high blood sugar, heart wellness, and vascular wellness. Other benefits of probiotics, and there are foods that you can eat that bump up the probiotics, so it doesn't have to be a supplement. Some of them have a very particular taste, but they facilitate a wide variety of biochemical functions to the person who's taking them. Intestinal permeability, that's the prevention of leaky gut. They can be effective for diseases like IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. They help with detoxification, particularly mercury. Potentially help to contain or minimize abnormal cell growth. As I said, glucose metabolism, weight management. They can help with brain function, mental health function, memory, healthy stress management. There's something I just said, IBS, which I forget now, irritable bowel syndrome, but there's something else that I've used probiotics for. I had a patient who had severe IBS. Often with IBS, it's interesting because there is a connection between a poor microbiome population and IBS through the gut-brain axis, because the small gut, which is in the small intestine, or in the small intestine, large intestine, is responsible for the secretion of serotonin as well as the brain. So there's this connection between anxiety and gut issues. And that's where IBS happens, irritable bowel syndrome. Most people either have constipation or they have diarrhea. And with that patient in particular, I began probiotics, and then we removed the things that kill the microbiome. She was an adult, so we removed alcohol. We removed fatty foods, ultra-processed foods. She did come to see me. At that time, I was doing acupuncture because I wanted her stress levels to go down. And as she practiced the breathing, exercise, removing these foods, and also and alcohol especially, and also doing probiotics, the IBS basically went away. That took about 3 months. It was amazing because she had had these issues for quite a while, but I think the probiotics played a part in the entire thing. And that's it. Helps with performance improvement in elite athletes. Foods that help to bump up the microbiome. As I was saying, first things that harm the microbiome, antibiotics, alcohol, stress. Antibiotics can cause dysbiosis. There's supposed to be an S there, which means that the good bacteria and the bad bacteria are out of ratio. So you're having an overpopulation of bad bacteria. Other things that can cause limited or poor microbiome, cytokine balance, which is those messengers that increase inflammation, having ongoing infections, poor diet, stress, aging. I thought I had alcohol here, but I'll also say alcohol. C. diff is associated with diarrhea, which is associated with a poor microbiome, which is associated with poor immune function, which is associated with taking too many antibiotics. So there's certain antibiotics that put you at risk for certain diseases as well. Poor diet, just to talk to that, and then what can you take that will bump up the microbiome? So as I did with that patient, we removed all alcohol. And then in terms of the diet, we removed all fatty foods. And after the fatty foods and the oily foods, fried foods, and fast foods, we removed all ultra-processed foods. She went predominantly plant-based, but with a little bit of salmon or oily fish, the occasional egg as well. And then we started working on stress. I mean, she was probably 22, so very young. So aging was not a factor, but it's very common in young people. I mean, anxiety, irritable bowel, anxiety plus gut issues, very common in like teenagers up to the age of 25. It's because they're dealing probably with poor diet and a lot of stress. So aging isn't an element there. But we started working on stress reduction. That's why she was coming to me for acupuncture. She started doing the breathing, started exercising. One of the exercises that's excellent for reducing stress, aside from walking, as I said yesterday, is swimming. Just because of the wonderful, comforting nature of water, and you're getting all of those bliss hormones when you're swimming, if you're moving in the water, that is. So you're getting the release of endorphins, dopamine, as well as serotonin. If you're just sitting in the water, you get the de-stressing benefits, but without as many of those bliss hormones. Yes?
Is the chlorine in the pool wrecking your...
We're back to chlorine, but it's true. Probably, because the chlorine is probably killing the friendly flora that you have on your skin. So swimming in the lake, swimming in the ocean. I know you might ask about the salt in the microbiome, but preferably not going swimming in the pool every day. Cold plunges or doing hydrotherapy at home can be really effective for decreasing stress, maybe not the time when you're getting in the cold, but afterwards. When it comes to hydrotherapy, I like to recommend contrast showers. So you're taking a shower and it's hot. You might do 3 minutes of hot, then turn it to very cold. That would be about 30 seconds. Back to hot, 3 minutes. Back to cold, 30 seconds. You do 3 rounds. That's also not only de-stressing, but it's also very good for bumping up your immune system. So 3 rounds of contrast showers. So in terms of the diet, what can you eat that helps with probiotics? As I said, fermented coconut yogurt. You could have sauerkraut, kimchi as well. Some people are pro, some people are against kombucha, but it's also a drink that's very high in natural probiotics as well. I have a slide here. Ooh, we're near the end. I'm going to go through a few slides and then I'll get to some more food. Does anyone have any questions? A few more slides and then we'll get to some more foods. Conditions that are associated with dysbiosis. I'm not going to go through them all. You'll see IBS there. These are conditions that are associated with a microbiome that's not strong, where the population of bad bacteria is kind of getting to the point where it's overpopulating the good bacteria. Allergies, obesity, even type 1 diabetes. There's a strong early life association between those three, and maybe having different things that happened so you didn't have a good developed microbiome early in life. Out of these diseases here, which you might know, depression, stress, anxiety. I've also already talked about the effects of the microbiome on mental health. Abnormal cell growth, which is cancer. CVD, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, IBD, which stands for inflammatory bowel disease. This is Crohn's and colitis. And I'll stop there, but all of these conditions It's not necessarily saying that they'll happen, but the risk factors are higher when you don't have a strong microbiome. What are probiotics? Just in case people don't know what probiotics are, and I've been talking about them, probiotics are microorganisms which, when administered in adequate amounts, can confer a health benefit on the host. Basically, probiotics are good bacteria that you're putting in your body to populating the already existing good bacteria in your body. Most strains are isolated from the human intestine. Some of the more popular strains are Lactobacillus, Bifidobacteria, Saccharomyces, different bacillus, Streptococcus. I don't really recommend E. coli, but those are the most common different strains that you'll find. Usually you'll get a blended probiotic, and it might be a blend of all of these strains. As I said, for different diseases, different strains are better. I found that with anxiety, if I'm recommending a probiotic that's heavy in Saccharomyces, that tends to be a little more effective. And for IBS, that's also what I used. Okay, we're going to skip that and get to some food.
I just have a quick question.
Please.
About probiotics. Is probiotics something that you take a bottle full and then you've repopulated your guts and you don't have to take it anymore, or do you?
It depends why you're taking it. So if you're taking it for a chronic condition, then I'd recommend that you continue taking it until the condition's resolved. If you're taking it for general health, just as you're kind of cleaning up your diet, then I'd recommend some people take probiotics like every day, or they take it about 3 times a week. That's what I would recommend, taking it 3 times a week, and it just becomes part of your supplement routine. Foods that beneficially affect the microbiome. Sorry, the very top of that is cut off. But these are some foods that you can eat that are going to help with the population of the microbiome. I'll go through them for anyone who is listening and not seeing, or you can't see really well. Apricots, arugula, bamboo shoots, black beans, black tea. I don't necessarily recommend black tea. I mean, with kombucha, it is based on a black tea. But there's so many other options where you're not taking the caffeine in. Broccoli, cabbage, chickpeas, Concord grapes, cranberry juice. Keep in mind with Concord grapes, if you decided to take the grape juice, it's very high in sugar. But also when it comes to grape juice, there are a lot of grape juices that are a blend. Usually, so this is where the big print giveth and the little print taketh away. A lot of juices that say grape juice, when you flip them over, it's apple juice is the first ingredient because Concord grapes are expensive. So you'd want, if you're doing Concord grape juice, you want to just take a little bit every day. Make sure that it's 100% not a blend and nothing added. Cranberry juice, again, if you're choosing cranberry juice, just a little shot every day. Excellent for women for the prevention of UTIs. A lot of cranberry juices are a blend or they have sugar added. Read the ingredients, make sure that it's 100%. There's no other juice in it and there's no sugar added. You will know as soon as you taste it. Extremely tart. Dark chocolate. There are different degrees of dark chocolate. I'm not going to talk like a little speech about each one of these, or we'll be here all evening. But when it comes to dark chocolate, preferably you'd be taking dark chocolate that has no sugar added. Okay? Doesn't taste that great. And then dark chocolate that's at least 70%. Optimal would be like 90% dark chocolate. How many people here have eaten 90% dark chocolate? Okay. Out of the people who ate it, how many people liked it?
Way too much.
Really?
Way too much.
All right. I thought everyone would say it tastes terrible.
It does.
90% dark chocolate, no sugar added. Okay. I don't actually really recommend dark chocolate, even though I just spoke that much about it, because Dark chocolate actually can cause the secretion of dopamine, even if it is 90% no sugar added, etc. And when dopamine's secreted, then it leads to a little bit of an addiction. So it definitely leads to an addiction. There's so many other options instead. Yes.
Chocolate, you have vanadium in it, which curbs the cravings of food.
Sure. But then you keep taking the dark chocolate. It has L-theanine in it. That's very calming as well. So lots of benefits. But I think there are other options that you could take as well. Yes. Caffeine as well. So you could opt for something else where you're getting those benefits as from other foods. Kale, kimchi. Kimchi, very high in probiotics, but not a lot of people are big fans unless you grew up with kimchi, or you're Korean, or you love Korean restaurants, etc. Why? Because kimchi is pretty spicy. But if you don't like kimchi, are there people here who like kimchi? All right, awesome. Oh, I got a yuck over here. But so kimchi, great option. If you don't like kimchi, you might go for sauerkraut, which is on here somewhere, because it's still cabbage and it's fermented. However, you want to be careful when it comes to sauerkraut and high blood pressure. I just jumped from the K's to the S's. But with sauerkraut and high blood pressure, because a lot of sauerkraut is made with a lot of salt. I had a patient who had ongoing high blood pressure. I didn't understand what was happening. Same patient who was drinking the water and wouldn't give up the water. And she was making her own sauerkraut with a lot of salt. So not good for high blood pressure unless you can get sauerkraut that's not made with a lot of salt. But better if you don't like kimchi, you're still getting fermented cabbage. We are at kiwis, lentils, mango, olive oil, pao-cal, peas, don't ask about that one, peaches, pomegranate juice, which I love, or pomegranates. Did you know that pomegranates are actually high in protein? When you think of protein, you don't think of pomegranates. Pomegranate juice has actually been compared to certain ACE inhibitors, similar to ramipril, for reducing blood pressure. So in studies, pomegranate juice has been compared to blood pressure medication. With pomegranate juice, similar to grape juice, similar to cranberry juice, you want to get 100%, no sugar added, not a blend, so make sure you read the ingredients. You'll know by the price tag. Yes? ACE inhibitors? Great question. So if you're already on ACE inhibitors, then you could have some, but I wouldn't have it every day, and then you want to monitor your blood pressure as well. That also goes for the garlic, because garlic lowers blood pressure. And it also goes for something like hibiscus tea, which people just like it as a refreshing drink. Also lowers blood pressure. So if you're taking hibiscus tea or garlic or pomegranate juice, be very careful to monitor your blood pressure to see if it's going too low. I mean, maybe if it goes too low, you can lower your dose of the medication. But you just want that awareness, because if blood pressure goes too low, people are at risk of falling. They get dizzy, lightheaded, etc., and you want to eliminate a falling risk. Pumpernickel bread. I don't usually recommend bread. I think you can have all these other options. Sauerkraut, as we've talked about, shiitake mushrooms, great for bumping up the immune system. So many wonderful options when it comes to mushrooms. I don't have lion's mane down here, also a great mushroom. Tomatoes, sourdough bread, walnuts, and yogurt. I recommend fermented coconut yogurt instead of yogurt that's coming from a 100% dairy source. But I'll talk a little more about some of these foods tomorrow and Thursday as we talk about weight loss. And I can get more into what kind of tomatoes, the benefits of different tomatoes, is it anti-inflammatory, inflammatory, etc. This is not my list. This is actually a list from Dr. William Li. And Dr. William Li, I had mentioned him maybe on Sunday. He originally started studying cancer. He had an incredible TED Talk that came out, I think, in 2011, which was, can we cure cancer with food? And so he started studying, I see your hand, he started studying angiogenesis. Basically, when cancer is beginning to populate the body, cancer starts creating its own blood supply, which is called angiogenesis, the creation of new blood vessels, so that cancer can get more and more nutrients from its own kind of blood supply or its own blood highway. The more angiogenesis that occurs, then the faster the cancer grows. Things that feed cancer are sugar. When someone has a more hypoxic state, meaning they are not well oxygenated, cancer tends to grow in a more hypoxic state and a more acidic state as well. So he wanted to study. He started a foundation called the Angiogenesis Foundation, and this slide is from the Angiogenesis Foundation. He wanted to know, are there foods that you can eat that prevent or stop angiogenesis, which will stop cancer from creating its own blood supply or cut that blood supply, that creation of the new blood supply off. All of that to say, I didn't particularly want to talk about cancer, but this is Dr. William Lee's work, and so this compilation of foods is from his foundation. Yes, you had a question?
Am I out of line when I talk about flax seed?
Never out of line, because we're talking about it tomorrow. I was actually going to talk about it today. I usually recommend flax seeds a little more for the omega-3 fatty acids in flax seeds, but it's also high in fiber. So when you're eating flax seeds, just in case you have diverticulosis or you have some pockets in your large intestine, don't recommend, and you don't know it, I recommend eating flax meal. So if you have a coffee grinder, instead of using it for coffee, you can use it to grind up the flax seeds, and then it's a high fiber food. So it actually acts as a prebiotic that feeds the microbiome. So it's a great option. Yeah. You're welcome. Any other, but we're talking about it tomorrow when we talk about weight loss. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you recommend colloidal silver?
Controversial. I don't, just because I haven't, personally I've used it myself, so I guess I'll start with that, but I don't recommend it to my patients, just because I haven't seen enough studies on it. For myself, I used it for bumping up my immune system, sinus condition, etc., mainly for those things, but I haven't seen enough ongoing studies for colloidal silver. So I don't recommend it to my patients if I can't prove in randomized control trials that it's effective.
For the
Ingesting, exactly. Any other questions? Oh, I think we are here now. Questions? Any other questions? Yes. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Great for the microbiome. You just have to eat more of it, because in every tiny little pomegranate capsule, I mean, there's a seed and then there's just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of juice. But you can eat it. Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Grow your own. Yes. I have 2 trees over.
Ooh, I'm coming to your house then.
We all are.
Everybody here, we'll meet there tomorrow. Yes, did you have a question?
Subject of pomegranate. Who knew on that hot day when I went shopping and I was so thirsty and I bought the 10-year supply of pomegranate juice?
10-year supply.
We're coming to your house too.
Check 2 houses to go to right here. But continue to check your blood pressure if you're taking it every day. Yes, go ahead.
I don't have a question. I just
Oh.
have an observance.
Okay.
How wondrously we are made.
Fearfully and wonderfully made.
It just, how, I mean, it's just amazing. Our bodies are amazing, and we shoot ourselves in the foot quite often.
Yes, we can be our own worst enemy, for sure. That's why I said the first step towards better health, I mean, it's here. But after that, it's removing all those foods that lead to poor health, ultra-processed foods, etc. Yes, go ahead, Kathy, right?
Okay, and I've heard before, and you said that children who play in the dirt and
Yes.
and have pets and that, their immune systems are better.
Yes.
My question is, do you know whether, now they say old people are happier with pets,
Yes.
seniors,
Yeah.
would it make
Bump up their immune
better?
system. Okay.
Because they're happier or from immune?
Maybe. I mean, usually when they're saying that older people are happier with pets, therefore there's like dog therapy, dogs and pets. It's more that they've done studies on stress and the decrease in stress when you have a pet, when you're petting and feeling the fur, etc. Maybe just being exposed might.
Less stress, would your immune system be better?
Great question. Absolutely. So one of the things I'd said on that one of those slides was stress affects the microbiome, but stress definitely affects the immune system. So stress immediately does not affect the immune system, but that fight or flight response over time blunts the immune system. So that's why you could go through a stressful period and you're okay, and then as soon as the stress is over, boom, you get sick. So stress definitely affects the immune system, chronic stress, and in a negative way. Yes, go
I
ahead.
think if we started playing with the mud, though, that people would say something.
If you start playing with mud now, you're probably at the point where you wouldn't care, though. I mean, this is one of the benefits of gardening. Your gardening's like playing with the mud. Yes, go ahead, Henry.
I was amazed when you show how the stomach works.
Oh, that picture? I know. Amazing. It is. It's like a wave. I'd always heard that peristalsis was like a wave. But when I saw it, I said, wow, it really is like a wave. The contracting of the stomach. Yeah. Go ahead.
I just don't know if anybody here caught this, but it was maybe Michael will remember, but 15 or 20 years ago, there was a display that came around, it was traveling the world, and it was called Body Works. And
Yes.
what it was people who had donated their bodies to science, and they had, taken slices of people and resonated them. It was so interesting, and I thought, all teenage high school kids should see this because it would show, you would have seen it, and it showed what happens to the hard fat around, or smoker's lungs, or everything.
Wow.
Your whole blood system, your skeletal system. It was so cool to actually see all this in real life. It was kind of creepy, but it was pretty neat.
Yeah. Body Works. I remember hearing about it. I didn't go to see it. I'm sure it's probably on YouTube. There was also a documentary that was made, which might seem a little macabre, but it was the autopsy. It might be called The Autopsy of Obesity. It was on BBC, and doing something similar where they showed each organ after that person had died and how it was affected by fat and the disease state that it was in. I watched that while I was studying at the Naturopathic Medicine College. I never forgot because it was so wow. Yeah. On the BBC, if anybody wants to on Netflix watch the gut microbiome documentary, and then the documentary of the autopsy of obesity, and then Body Works, all interesting things to watch. I think we're going to end unless anyone has any other questions. Just to reiterate, if you're coming on Thursday, don't come tomorrow, on Thursday for the in-body assessment. Do come tomorrow night, definitely. Definitely come tomorrow night. But for the in-body assessment during the day, it's Thursday. We already have people signed up in the morning, so it will be available from 11 until 4. please go see Thyra, I think. Go see Thyra to sign up. Right, Thyra? That was a yes. Go see, yes?
Assessment, that
Yeah.
applies to everybody or just people who have a personal?
No, anybody. It's free for everybody. Free for anybody who's interested. It's a free 20-minute assessment with me where you're stepping on the in-body machine that does a full body analysis of the percentage of body fat you have, your BMI, percentage of muscle you have, your basal metabolic rate, et cetera, et cetera. So it's for anybody who's here, I guess. I'm not sure if anybody who's listening on Facebook and then shows up. But please sign up with Thyra because there are only so many slots, 20 minutes here on Thursday between 11 and 4. We're going to end with a prayer, and then I'll talk a little bit about what's happening tomorrow. So let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for what we've heard about today. We just pray, God, that you'll be with everyone here and be with us as we take steps towards better health. Help us to remember our homework based on what we've heard. And we say these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Your homework is to apply anything you heard tonight. For tomorrow, we're going to be talking about weight loss and food. And then Thursday, again, weight loss and the psychology of weight loss. Looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at 5 p.m. Have a good night, everyone. So you're one of the, unfortunately, I wrote here, I couldn't remember your That's Tara, now I know. So I said 11 because you and I have a very this time.
Awesome job.
How are you doing? Yeah, are you on your list too?
But you already have a time for 9 o'clock on Thursday. Yeah, Karen, not the health food store lady, Karen. You're welcome. I was there today.
Well, I got it.
Right before I came here, I went to the health food store.
When I do this. And I work, I always had all but when I was skinny. I need to wear when I weighed 120 pounds. Sobre la radiografía de los my brother already fui a la bebida ahí no have anything in the back? Lo escrito. I have the result. And I translated. I translated it. English. Okay. That's it.
early appointments to
I
here. Right, she's one in the name, and she said she didn't know if you wrote it
Nope,
down.
we did it yesterday. Karen, she's coming at 9 o'clock tomorrow. She's the health short lady. She just came in and asked me. Asked them. Really? You don't have enough. You're all right with that?
Yeah, I just got one.
Those booked up fast. I mean,